Chapter 6:18. Has the battle in Xianxia become so serious? Wei Si and the others were urgently summoned by Jiang Pingji. They had just sat down when she handed them a letter. After reading through the contents of the letter, her jade-like face darkened. She involuntarily tightened her grip on the letter, leaving a mark on it. Even though Feng Zhen was the last to arrive, he was impatient and couldn't wait to send the message. Without caring about his image, he moved closer to Wei Si. After seeing it clearly, Feng Zhen finally understood Wei Si's astonishment. This is the Emperor's rescue? It can't be fake, right? Wei Si shook his head and passed the letter to Feng Jin, who had been waiting for a long time. The seal at the end of the letter is indeed the Imperial Jade Seal. Receive the mandate of the heavens, live forever and prosper. Other than the Emperor, who would dare to use these words? Feng Zhen sneered. Prince Changshu besieged Xianxia in the name of ridding the Emperor of evil. In order to protect himself, the Emperor summoned the Meng family of Cangzhou to lead their troops into the capital. This Meng family is interesting, betraying Prince Changshu's forces at the last minute. Isn't it enough that you've suffered a loss once? Now you've sent out an order to rescue the Emperor to all parts of the country, summoning your officials to lead troops to save the Emperor. Isn't the Emperor afraid that there are people with bad intentions among those who respond to the rescue? In layman's terms, the monarch is in trouble and the subjects are mobilizing their troops to rescue the Emperor. Prince Changshu used the name of cleaning up the Emperor's side, but in fact, it was also a form of protecting the Emperor. It was just that Prince Changshu did not have good intentions. The Meng family of Cangzhou also came to rescue the Emperor, but in the end, they defected to Prince Changshu's camp at the last minute, which was equivalent to the Emperor shooting himself in the foot. Feng Jin frowned and said, if the Emperor doesn't do this, he will lose his life. Although there were risks in summoning the whole world to rescue the Emperor, at least they could use the officials who came to rescue the Emperor to restrain Prince Changshu, who was at the peak of his power. If I'm lucky, I might be able to turn the situation around. Feng Zhen laughed and said harshly, even your roots are rotten, and you still want to come back from the brink of death? The royal family of Dongqing was like a rotten and withered towering tree. Its insides had long been hollowed out by pests, and its roots buried deep underground were also rotten and dead. Even the best gardener would not be able to save such a big tree. The royal family of Dongqing issued an edict to the world to rescue the king. Apart from dragging the whole of Dongqing into the quagmire of war, what other purpose did it serve? You're dreaming if you want to take this opportunity to make a comeback. Feng Zhen raised a hand to pick at his ear, then returned to his seat. He sat lazily as if he didn't have any bones. Feng Jin carefully read the contents of the letter and did not miss a single word. After reading it, he asked Jiang Pingji, what do you think, my lord? Rescue the Emperor? Or was he pretending to be deaf and dumb? Jiang Pingji said, I haven't decided yet. Even though the royal family has long been in decline and they no longer live up to their name is still there. As a subject who has received the king's edict, it is only right that I accept the edict and rush to their aid. It's just that this isn't a good season, so I don't really want to go. She frowned, but her expression did not show the slightest hesitation. It's precisely because it's hard to make a decision that I want to hear your opinions before deciding whether or not to get involved. Sending troops to protect the Emperor meant that all the forces in Dongqing, big and small, would gather in Xianxia. When the time came, the elites would gather and the heroes would meet. There would be a lot of talents, and perhaps future opponents would be among them. This was a good opportunity to poach someone. Jiang Pingji naturally did not want to miss such a lively event. However, just as she had said, it was not the right time to rescue the Emperor. If she went, it might even be a bad thing. The original plan was to recover Qingda County in the spring of next year. With An Chui supporting her from within the Red Lotus Group, coupled with the fact that the troops under her were all elites with extraordinary combat power, taking down Qingda County should be a sure thing. When the time came, she would absorb the power of the Red Lotus Group and further expand her own strength. Then, with the expanded military force, she would suppress the power of the aristocratic families in Shangyang County. Finally, she would replace the talents who had been trained with important positions. In this way, Not only would she be able to occupy Qingde County, but she would also be able to completely control Shangyang County. At this point, the entire territory of Wanzhou would be under her control. Dongqing only had 6 states and 21 counties, but the father and son of the Lu family had already occupied Wanzhou and Chongzhou. In the future, the power to contend for hegemony was already in embryonic form. This set of plans was linked to each other. If everything went according to plan, the situation would be very good. If she mobilized troops to rescue the emperor, it would be a little difficult to make ends meet. If she was unlucky and her nest was raided, her family's assets would be gone. Feng Jin muttered, "But if you don't go, I'm afraid you'll become the target of public criticism and a live target." Jiang Pingji sighed softly. The 3 strategists were still thinking. She secretly opened the bullet screen in the streaming room to see the opinions of the idle viewers. "Little angels, I'm so disappointed. So it's this rescue of the emperor. I thought the emperor was going to confer the title of Rescue the Emperor. Good luck, Gaokao. The streamer is encroaching on the entire territory of Wanzhou as a district magistrate. To put it bluntly, she's a rebel and a traitor, yet she's being conferred the title of a king. However, she can use this opportunity to solidify the title of Governor of Wanzhou. Sending troops to rescue the emperor isn't for nothing. There must be benefits." Yu Yuxing, I agree with the comment above. This is obviously a good opportunity. After all, the streamer's power is not weak now. If she can learn from Boss Chow and use the tactic of holding the emperor hostage and ordering disobedient subjects, that would be even more cool. "Streamer, you're my goddess." Kneeling for a wave of monthly tickets? No. If things were really that simple, would the streamer and her friends still be so conflicted here? Obviously, the 4 people present could use their intelligence to crush the idle viewers in the streaming room. If even these idle fish in the water could understand, how could they not? In the end, her old friend, Lao Cg Lianmeng, told her what Jiang Pingji was conflicted about and embarrassed about. Lao Cg Lianmeng, going to rescue the emperor? There are benefits, but there are also disadvantages. The disadvantage is that Qingde County has not been conquered yet. There are still restless local aristocrats in Shangyang County that have not been completely tamed. If something goes wrong in the process of rescuing the emperor, the streamer's nest will be in danger. Not going to rescue the emperor? Even better, the Dongqing royal family is not finished yet. This can be seen from their imperial edict to rescue the emperor. The streamer disobeys the imperial edict and solidifies the title of a rebel and a traitor. When the time comes, if the Dongqing royal family makes a comeback, the streamer will be the first to be dealt with. Of course, if the comeback fails and Prince Changsho ascends to the throne, Prince Changsho will still target Jiang Pingji. Disobeys the imperial edict and rejects the imperial edict. What else could she be if not a rebel and a traitor? There was science and analysis in the streaming room, but most of it was the bullet screen of bored onlookers. After looking around, Jiang Pingji didn't find anything useful. She pursed her lips and continued to close the bullet screen. On the other side, the 3 strategists had already reached a tacit agreement in their hearts. Wei Ci had mingled with the bandit Jiang Pingji in his previous life. Under the influence of what he saw and heard, his heart was even more free than Feng Zhen's. For example, at this moment, Feng Zhen was still limited by his old way of thinking, but Wei Ci had an idea. However, the idea he gave was ingenious, but to put it bluntly, it was really a bluntly idea. "My lord, I think there is no conflict in this matter." Wei Ci thought about it and said, "My lord wants to rescue the emperor, but you're afraid that it will delay the battle against Qingde County in the spring of next year. If that's the case, why not take Qingde County in advance? Maybe we can even make it in time for the spring plowing next year." Chapter 619. War in Winter? Brother, it will be the new year soon. Have you checked the almanac? Do you know what New Year means? Wasn't there supposed to be 7 days off during the New Year? Eaten by a dog? If they started the war in winter, even if it was a blitzkrieg, they would not be able to take it down without 2 to 3 months. This meant that they had to fight until the beginning of spring. If they were lucky, they would spend the new year in their tents. If they were unlucky, they would have to go to war. While other people were having New Year's Eve dinner, they were chopping off people's heads and lingering with the dead. Feng Zhen imagined the scene after Chengde County was conquered and felt a throbbing pain in his chest. His eyes rolled back and he let out a short and exaggerated "ah" before collapsing onto the carpet. Because he was born with a weak constitution, coupled with the hanshi powder he consumed after courting death, Feng Zhen's face was pale. Looking at his sickly appearance, it really looked like he was suffering from an illness and was extremely agitated. However, he could deceive others, but not Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji didn't seem to understand. She asked him directly, "Where did you go the past few days? Did your kidneys become weak?" He couldn't even sit properly. Wasn't that because his back was hurting and his kidney was weak? Feng Zhen almost choked on his breath. He had no choice but to put on an expression that said he would rather die than live. He crawled up with his dead fish eyes wide open. Ever since he arrived at the Black Den, where all the jackals, wolves, tigers and leopards gathered, he did not even take hanshi powder. He also quit drinking alcohol, not to mention going out to look for girls. Sob sob sob, the Lord even slandered him for having a weak kidney. Feng Zhen felt extremely wronged. "My lord, isn't it inappropriate to start a war in the middle of winter? First of all, it's close to the new year. The soldiers will be reunited with their families. If we were to separate at this time, it would be too cruel. Second of all, it's a world of ice and snow. The snow has sealed off the mountains. It's difficult for the troops to march. The soldiers are tired and the horses are tired. It's really not suitable to mobilize the troops." Today was an agricultural society, and the timing of a war was closely related to the agricultural fields. Spring required spring plowing. If they delayed spring plowing because of the war, this year's harvest would be gone. Wouldn't they have nothing to eat next year? Summer crops are planted in summer, the crops are not yet ripe, and the weather is unbearably hot. This is also not a good season for fighting. The winters were extremely cold, especially in the northern regions. Snow and ice filled the air, and the conditions for marching and fighting were extremely difficult. Whether it was offense or defense, fighting in winter was simply asking for trouble. Along the way, the most suitable time to start the war was after the spring plowing, before the summer planting, after the autumn harvest, and before the midwinter. These two periods of time were neither hot nor cold, suitable for stirring up trouble. What about now? It would be the new year in a few days. Was the weather suitable for fighting? Feng Zhen's words were not unreasonable, but the current situation was unique and they had no choice but to fight. Feng Jin automatically ignored the clown Feng Zhen. At first, he didn't have a good impression of this prodigal son. But after getting to know him better, he wasn't that annoying. Especially when Feng Zhen also experienced the pain of working overtime and looked like he was better off dead, Feng Jin's heart felt unusually balanced. He cupped his hands and bowed, then stepped out of the ranks to report, "I think that Zixiao's suggestion is a good plan. Our lord has a good governance. This year's autumn harvest has been pretty good. The district headquarters granary is already full of rice, and there is no shortage of provisions in the military camp. It was currently the 12th lunar month of the year, but the soldiers were diligent in their training and could be considered as elites. If a battle were to break out, they wouldn't lose much of their combat strength. Furthermore, woolen shirts were very popular. Every soldier had 2 sets to change into. In addition, the Lord had assigned them leather armor. Even in today's weather, marching and fighting wouldn't be hindered. I think that this plan is feasible." Fighting in the middle of winter was indeed difficult, but everything had its pros and cons. Their soldiers had a hard time attacking in the winter, but the Red Lotus group had a hard time defending. If the wind and snow were compared to a negative state, Jiang Pingji's army would be weakened by 10%, while the Red Lotus group would be weakened by 50%. Why did he say that? Listen to the analysis. Jiang Pingji had many captives. After screening, most of them were thrown to Xiangyang district to mine iron ore. She found craftsmen who could smelt iron and craftsmen who could make armor. She used the current armor specifications as a reference and designed a set of military equipment. While ensuring safety and defense, She tried to reduce the load as much as possible and save more materials to make more armor and weapons. Excluding the nearly 10,000 new recruits recruited in Xiangyang County, most of the original 20,000 soldiers were wearing armor with defensive functions. Their weapons were standardized and could be considered elites. On the other hand, most of the members of the Red Lotus group were dressed in rags and had zero defense. They had all kinds of weapons in their hands: long sticks, kitchen knives, axes, carrying poles, choppers. Some even held stones, but most of them were bare-handed. In terms of numbers, the 100,000 members of the Red Lotus group were indeed terrifying. In terms of combat power, with the quality of the Red Lotus group, the elites on Jiang Pingji's side could fight 1 against 10. They were both fighting in winter, but their side had the absolute upper hand, not to mention that she had an insider like in Chui. For the sake of 7 days of rest, Feng Zhen still wanted to struggle a little. But, Wei Si added, "My lord has specially chosen the cold winter and hot summer days to train her troops. Fighting in winter is indeed difficult, but it's not impossible to fight." Feng Zhen was in complete despair. Feng Jin continued, "If we can conquer Chengde County before the beginning of spring, we can still make it in time for the spring plowing. If the spring plowing went smoothly, it meant that there was hope for this year's harvest. The food in Wanzhou was enough to support them in any battle." Wei Si said with a smile, "If we can conquer all of Wanzhou before the rescue of the emperor, perhaps my lord's title will become Wanzhou's governor." In terms of military strength, Jiang Pingji was definitely in the top 3 among those who came to rescue the emperor. The emperor of Dongqing had a favor to ask, so he had to give her some benefits. Jiang Pingji was already the de facto governor of Wanzhou. If the emperor gave her some benefits, it would most likely be to make her legitimate. She was the only governor of a province who was younger than 20 years old. Not to mention Dongqing, even in the previous dynasty, Xia, there might not be a second governor like her. Feng Jin raised his eyebrows, and a smile appeared at the corner of his lips. According to this rhythm, the situation would be very good. Chongzhou and Wanzhou shared a border. Together with Hu County, when Lu Shi retired behind the scenes, it meant that Jiang Pingji would occupy 1/3 of Dongqing's territory. The biggest threat was that the northern borderline had suffered a great loss of vitality due to the horse plague and was unable to move south. No one could stop Jiang Pingji from expanding her territory. Feng Zhen raised his hand to his forehead and muttered, "I'm still thinking about the 7 days of rest during the new year." Wei Si said in a low voice, "You can rest when you're done." Feng Zhen snorted coldly. "If I believe you again, I'll read the 2 words Feng Zhen backwards." The conversation between the two could not be hidden from Jiang Pingji's ears. She ruthlessly stabbed Feng Zhen in the heart. Zisher is all alone, and he doesn't have any beautiful wives or concubines at home. Whether it's the New Year holiday or not, isn't he always alone? Feng Zhen, "My lord, this is hurtful. Although he is single, this is not an excuse to swallow his vacation." Jiang Pingji cruelly exposed the truth and placed the bloody truth in front of Feng Zhen. She said, "Moreover, there are 7 days of rest during the new year. All the entertainment venues are closed. Where are you going to find entertainment? You'll still be home alone. It's so boring. If you're busy with government affairs, at least the chef can prepare 3 meals a day for you. Go home. Are you planning to starve to death at home?" Feng Zhen. No matter how desperate Feng Zhen was, the war in the winter had become a reality. In less than 2 days, Feng Zhen knocked his head on the table that was piled up like a mountain and said weakly. Chapter 620. War in Winter? When Feng Shi heard this news, he almost thought that there was something wrong with his ears and that he had heard wrongly. He asked Feng Jin in private, "It's the middle of winter now, and the new year is approaching." "It's a bit." Feng Gray swallowed the words he was about to say, but Feng Jin already understood what his elder brother was trying to convey. Feng Jin heaved a long sigh and said helplessly, "The emperor has issued an edict for the world to come to his aid. My lord, as a subject, naturally can't disobey the edict. But if we obey the order to rescue the emperor, all of the lord's previous efforts will be wasted. If we don't get rid of the Red Lotus group, it will be difficult for the people of Wanzhou to live in peace. In order to get the best of both worlds, we have no choice but to start the war now. We want to end the war as soon as possible and send troops to Qinzhou to respond to the imperial edict. Even in front of his elder brother, Feng Jin still managed to put on a good show. Jiang Pingji chose to start the war in winter not for her own selfish desires, nor was it to expand her territory. She did it for the good of the people of Wanzhou. She had a sincere patriotic heart. She was an important, good, and virtuous minister that was hard to find in Dongqing. As for the truth, well, it was fine as long as the brothers knew it in their hearts. Feng Gui's lips curled into a faint smile, with a hint of mockery in his voice. Rescue the emperor. For the royal family of Dongqing, regardless of whether they succeeded or failed, the final outcome could not change the fact that they were about to perish. How could a dynasty that was rotten to the core continue? It was unknown whether this rescue would allow the royal family to struggle at death's door or hasten their death. Feng Jin furrowed his brows with a thoughtful look on his face. My lord had no other choice this time. If not for the interference of the rescue mission, my lord would have followed the plan to recover Qingda County after the spring plowing. Now, I can only bring the time forward and give it a try. Feng Guo lowered his gaze for a moment before he probed, Huayu, how confident is Lu Lanting in this battle? If she won, Jiang Pingji, whose power had expanded once again, would be able to deal with the local aristocrats in Xiangyang County and completely control Wanzhou. If she lost, then the local gentry clans of Xiangyang County would probably cause her some trouble. People strive for higher places, and water flows to lower places. The noble families could last for hundreds or even thousands of years not only because of their good family traditions, but also because they had to make precise investments and pick sides. If the gentry could not see the future, Jiang Pingji would have to be careful of the knives in the dark. I don't dare to say 100%, but at least 90%. Feng Jin flicked his sleeve with one hand and brewed tea with the other. The two brothers sat opposite each other in front of the window, brewing tea and wine as they talked about political affairs. Although this incident happened suddenly, the Lord has always liked to make early preparations. This year's autumn harvest was pretty good, and the granary was already full of food. The army's provisions were plentiful, the horses were strong and healthy, and the soldiers were well trained, so their resistance to the cold was extremely strong. In comparison, the Red Lotus group is a motley crew that can't even be shown in public. With such a great disparity, as long as my lord doesn't destroy the city walls, we will definitely win. When Feng Gue heard the first sentence, he secretly sucked in a breath of cold air. Even if he was the reincarnation of the god of war, he wouldn't dare to say that his chances of winning a battle were that high. After all, a battle was about the right time, the right place, and the right people. After listening to Feng Jin's analysis, Feng Gue could vaguely understand where his confidence came from. Looks like I've underestimated Lu Lanting. Feng Gue and Feng Jin sat facing each other, sipping their tea. The tea burner beside them was boiling, emitting white steam. The two of them were silent for a while. Feng Jin broke the tense atmosphere. This time, many heroes of Dongqing will definitely be gathered for the rescue of the emperor. Brother, do you want to go and join in the fun? Nanxing had been destroyed, Dongqing was nearing its end, and Zhongzhou was beginning to decline. The remaining Beiyuan and Xichang were also in chaos. The entire world had already been embroiled in the whirlpool of war. Unless a wise ruler unified the world, the chaos of the 16 kingdoms would inevitably return. If the Feng family wanted to continue for thousands of generations, they had to get past this hurdle and fight for the throne. There were millennium-old aristocratic families in the world, but there was no millennium-old royal family. The Feng family had no interest in that position and continued to follow the path of support. As a Zongzi, whether he was willing or not, Feng Gue had to choose someone with potential to be his lord. Now that the rescue of the emperor was being carried out, all the famous heroes would be gathered in one place. Why wouldn't Feng Gue go and join in the fun? Feng Gue's eyes carried a hint of coldness. His tone was calm as he said, looking at the situation in Dongqing, there are only a few forces that can barely catch my eye. Among them, the biggest is Lu Shi and his son. The rest of the small fries either have high ambitions but low abilities, or are unlucky and have weak foundations. At most, they can stir up trouble in their own territory. In my opinion, it will be difficult for them to achieve great things. It doesn't matter if I go or not. There was a saying, don't look for a boyfriend in a rubbish heap. If it were Feng Gui, he would also refuse to choose a wise lord from a group of small fries. To put it more bluntly, apart from a few specific forces, the rest were not presentable. There was no need for Feng Gui to even consider them. The world was so big, why was there a need to restrict the candidate to a small Dongqing? Feng Jin agreed with his elder brother's words. In this era, wars could not be fought on a whim. The preparations before a war were very complicated. Jiang Pingji sent the order to Fengyi County and got her informant to secretly contact An Chui to ask him about the progress on his side. She thought that they could rest during the new year, but they were still too young. When Qiguan Rang and the others received the news, they all thought that they had not slept enough that morning and were hallucinating. Su Ku and the others passed the letter around. Jiang Pingji explained very clearly in the letter that they had to fight this war even if they did not want to. Yang Si curled his lips. How troublesome. Who would go to war during the new year? Su Ku knew that Yang Si had been in a bad temper recently. Who asked the government affairs of Qingan district to be placed on Yang Si's shoulders. The kitchen provided 4 to 5 meals a day, but the fat that Yang Si had just gained was still visibly thinning out. They were busy. Qiguan Rang said, let's discuss this with the officers first. We have to confirm the soldiers who will go to war as soon as possible. Su Ku was in charge of the logistics. The rations and fodder needed for the war had already been supplied. He was basically in charge of everything. From the letter that Jiang Pingji sent, she was not asking for their opinions. She was only informing them of a fact. As a capable general, all they could do now was to do their best to prepare for the war. Yang Si let out a long sigh and secretly rolled his eyes. Qiguan Rang and Su Ku were busy preparing for war. This meant that more than half of the government affairs of Fengyi County would be piled on his shoulders. This was going to exhaust him to death. Sacrificing my life for a meal, your master is really stupid. Yang Si rolled his dead fish eyes. The official documents on the table were already piled high, casting a shadow that could envelop his entire body. The page boy had been captured by Yang Si to be an able-bodied man. From the beginning, he stumbled and became adept at government affairs now. Who could understand the hardships he had gone through? He laboriously carried a large pile of bamboo slips over and placed them beside the table with a clang. He supported himself against the pile of bamboo slips and panted. Chapter 621. The boy servant said, Mr. is not stupid. It's just that Mr. Zixiao and the others are too cunning. They know that you can't resist the temptation of delicacies, but they still use food to seduce you. Sir, why don't you take some time to secretly learn from a chef? Once you've learned the skills, let's escape. The corners of Yang Si's mouth twitched. His tongue had been spoiled by the chefs of Fengyi County. If he left here, wouldn't he starve to death? Would they starve to death or die of exhaustion? This was a difficult choice. As a foodie, Yang Si decisively chose the latter. The former was too cruel. Because of the imperial edict to rescue the emperor, not only was Jiang Pingji's plan disrupted, but even the strategists and generals under her were busy. Even An Chui, who was working as a spy in Qingda County, was affected. When he received the contact from the informant, he thought that Jiang Pingji was going to send him supplies again. But An Chui was a cautious person. He had already sent over a batch of resources before, and they had not finished using them yet. How could he send them over again? When he thought of this, An Chui's first thought was that his identity had been exposed. He was worried, so he asked a few of his sworn brothers to protect him in secret while he went to meet the informant. An Chui's identity had not been exposed. The informant had come to inform them that the plan had been brought forward. An Chui was suspicious. Why didn't they wait until spring to start the war? The informant said, I don't know about this either. I heard that it has something to do with the imperial edict to rescue the king. This news has already spread. and Chui wasn't someone who was good at strategizing. For a moment, he didn't understand the connection between rescuing the emperor and bringing forward Jiang Pingji's plan. He didn't ask in detail. After all, the job of an informant was to contact him, so he didn't know much. After Chui went back, he thought about it deeply. His heart was restless. He hurriedly gathered a few of his brothers for a discussion. He suppressed his excitement and his cheeks were slightly distorted. This is a great opportunity for us brothers to rescue the emperor. If Jiang Pingji kept her promise and gave Chui 10% of her wealth and manpower, he could use this 10% to rescue the king and reap some benefits. Most of his sworn brothers were uncivilized people. They admired Chui's knowledge and were even more grateful for his sincere treatment. When Chui said it would be profitable, they believed him. The dark-skinned man first felt happy for Chui, cupping his fists to congratulate him. Then, a look of hesitation appeared on his face. But, big brother, we haven't bribed enough people. Will Fengyi County be dissatisfied? Chui said, fighting a war isn't something that can be fought on a whim. They still need to prepare the soldiers' rations and come up with a battle plan. No matter what, it will take some time. In addition to the march, it will take about half a month. If we brothers work together, we won't have to worry about anything not being done. However, despite the urgency of the situation, we cannot give ourselves away because of this and arouse the suspicion of the Red Lotus group. We must be cautious. The black-faced man nodded as he listened. He had complete trust in Anne's words. Don't worry, big brother. How can you not rest assured when we are handling this matter? I will definitely do it properly and not leave a single flaw. Chui had a gratified look on his face. The thatched hut was filled with brotherly love and joy. Elsewhere, Huang Song was steadily expanding his territory. Like Jiang Pingji, he was caught unprepared by the imperial edict to rescue the emperor. Although he was the descendant of a eunuch, Huang Tan was the emperor's confidant. He sold his official position and received an unknown amount of money and rations. He was secretly very wealthy. In addition, Huang Song's father loved to do business. He had also accumulated a rich family property for Huang Song. With money, rations, and Huang Tan's support in the court, Huang Song's power grew steadily. He already had more than 10,000 soldiers under his command. When he received the imperial edict to rescue the emperor, he was so worried that his scalp itched. Under Feng Zhu's instigation, Huang Song had long given up his desire to be a virtuous official. If someone were to label him as a rebel and a traitor, he would not be able to defend himself. Under such circumstances, he felt a little guilty. If he responded to the imperial edict to rescue the emperor, would he not be walking right into a trap? If he did not have the intention to rebel, why would a small district magistrate of Diang district raise 10,000 soldiers? Feng Zhu snorted and said, "What are you afraid of, my lord? If they pursue this matter, you still have Lu Shi to bear the brunt. If they pursue this matter, they will pursue him first, then my lord. Now that the royal family has fallen, they have issued an imperial edict to rescue the emperor. They can't wait for the troops to be strong so that they can defeat Prince Changsho. It's a good thing that my lord has 10,000 troops. Why would I blame you?" Huang Song looked embarrassed. Yes, why was he nervous and guilty? Lu Shi had brazenly captured Fengyi County and taken Shangyang County from the Feng family. Now, he was coveting Qingde County. In the blink of an eye, the entire Wanzhou was about to fall into Lu Shi's hands. He, Huang Song, had only managed to control Maota County. If they were to pursue this matter, Lu Shi was the biggest rebel and a traitor. He could only be regarded as a small soldier waving the flag. So, should we respond to the imperial edict to rescue the emperor? Huang Song was different from Jiang Pingji. Although Jiang Pingji occupied 2 counties, Shangyang County had not completely surrendered. That was a hidden danger. In order to solve this hidden danger, she could only take down Qingde County in one go. After expanding her military force, she would turn around and deal with the local aristocrats in Shangyang County so that they would not dare to cause trouble. In comparison, Huang Song did not have so many scruples. Cheng Jing said, I think that the imperial edict to rescue the emperor is a good opportunity to show my lord's loyalty and benevolence. Naturally, we must go. Cheng Jing's thoughts coincided with Jiang Pingji's. It was a good platform to poach talents. The imperial edict to rescue the emperor was not the main point. The main point was that Huang Song could take the opportunity to show his talents and conduct and attract talents to his side. In layman's terms, it was using the platform to advertise and promote oneself. Feng Zhu seconded the idea. The other strategists in the government office also agreed. Huang Song made up his mind and made a final decision. Rescue the emperor? Go. For a moment, all the forces, big and small, had different thoughts. Because of the imperial edict to rescue the emperor, people's hearts were wavering. While the other forces gathered their troops and prepared to rescue the emperor, Jiang Pingji had already begun the final preparations before the war. This is the information sent back by our informant. Take a look. Because the war was about to begin, Jiang Pingji and Wei Ci returned to Fengyi County first. The various government affairs in Xiangyang County were left to Feng Zhen and Feng Jin to handle. Although Feng Zhen talked about going on strike all day, he completed his work very well. Feng Zhen was uninhibited, treacherous, and sly. He was extremely good at dealing with people. He was the most suitable person to deal with the gentry in Xiangyang County. As for whether he would die of exhaustion? She believed in the old saying, a scourge lives for 1,000 years. Feng Zhen was definitely someone with a long life. Moreover, Feng Jin was also helping him in Xiangyang County. He wouldn't die of exhaustion. Although the Red Lotus group is just a motley crew, many ants can kill an elephant. It's a headache to have so many people piled together. Jiang Pingji tucked her hands into her sleeves and sat on the seat of honor. Her hair still had snow on it. She had held an emergency meeting as soon as she arrived in Xiangyang District. She hadn't even had a hot meal yet. District Magistrate Liu wants to end the war quickly. We need to be cautious in this first battle. If we can take down a city in a flash, the morale of the Red Lotus group will definitely collapse. Yang Si bowed and said, if we can't take it down after a long time, or if we are at a disadvantage, it will easily affect the morale of the Red Lotus group. The Red Lotus group has the advantage in numbers. If their morale is boosted, it is very likely to prolong the war, which is very disadvantageous to us. Chapter 622. Time was limited. Jiang Pingji couldn't waste too much time with the Red Lotus group. The longer it dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for her. So, she had an idea. Jiang Pingji's eyes flickered slightly. Wei Ci's heart pounded. He had a vague sense of foreboding. He knew her too well. Every time she showed such an expression and gaze, she must be brewing some wicked idea in her heart. Jiang Pingji asking Yang Si for a plan was within his expectations. Since he dared to ask, he naturally would not be unprepared. District Magistrate Liu, please look here. Yang Si pointed to the topographic map in the government office and said, I think we can attack from here. Jiang Pingji looked in the direction Yang Si was pointing and found that it was an abandoned small town on the border of Chengde County. On the surface, the terrain didn't seem to be special, but if that was the case, Yang Si wouldn't have recommended this place. From here? She frowned. The others also followed Yang Si's train of thought. Like Yang Si, Qiguan Rang liked to use treacherous schemes. He was telepathic with him and quickly understood Yang Si's plan. Yang Si's goal was not this small town with poor defense at all. His goal was the mountain road behind the town. Meng Hun lowered his head and scratched the old skin on his hand. Occasionally, he turned his head to talk to Luo Yue about something. Both of them were experienced and knew that with their little knowledge, they couldn't give much good advice. Dian Yen and Li Yun, the two curious babies, were different. Over the past 6 months, Dian Yen had been promoted by Jiang Pingji again and again. He was now the deputy captain of the recruit camp and was considered a hot newcomer. If there were no accidents, he would also lead the troops to attack the Red Lotus group this time. However, his personality was more reserved and calm. He buried the questions he didn't understand in his heart and prepared to ask for advice in private. In comparison, Li Yun was more extroverted. He had a good relationship with everyone present, and he would ask any questions he had directly. He said, "Mr. Yang, I look left and right. There doesn't seem to be anything special here." Yang Si smiled faintly and said, "No, Han Mei, look here again. Do you still think there's nothing special about this place?" He moved his finger. Just as Qiguan Rang expected, Yang Si's goal was the mountain road behind the small town. Li Yun still didn't understand. Yang Si explained, "If we want to use the fastest speed to take down the Red Lotus group and crush their morale, we can't just rely on elite soldiers and good generals. If the Red Lotus group was determined to hold their ground and concentrate their forces against District Magistrate Lu, the longer the Red Lotus group dragged this out, the more disadvantageous it would be for District Magistrate Lu. Moreover, it was close to the new year. Any slight setback would greatly damage our morale. Under such circumstances, we can only concentrate our forces to attack one place and catch them off guard. Only then will our chances of victory be higher." Yang Si had a good impression of Li Yun. Previously, this young fellow even knitted a pair of warm gloves and a circular scarf for him. Therefore, Yang Si, who usually did not like to bother with outsiders, was surprisingly patient with Li Yun. He continued, "This mountain road was built during the chaotic times of the 16 kingdoms. It has been in disrepair for many years and is difficult to traverse, so it has long been abandoned. The people prefer the flat and safe official road. Before the official road was built, this mountain road connected Fenghu County and Jinmen County. The territorial division system of the Great Xia dynasty was similar to the county system that the viewers in the livestream knew, but there were differences. The 5 countries of Dongqing, Nanxing, Beiyuan, Xichang, and Zhongzhou all claimed to be the orthodox Great Xia dynasty. Many of their systems were copied from the previous dynasty. However, certain changes were made in the process of copying. Fengyi County included Shangan District, Jiaoping District, Maolin District, and Xiangyang District. They were all in Jiang Pingji's hands now, so I won't go into detail. Chengde County, on the other hand, also had 4 districts: Honglian District, Jinmen District, Fenghu District, and Chuyu District. The founder of the Red Lotus Group's ancestral home was in Honglian District, so the cult he founded was also named after Red Lotus. The small town that Yang Si pointed out was actually a junction point near Fenghu County and Jinmen County. At first, it was just a remote small village. Because the mountain road connected the 2 places for commerce, merchants came and went frequently. The place gradually became prosperous and slowly became a small town. However, the mountain road was difficult to traverse. In the middle of the Great Xia dynasty, the government chose another place to build an official road, and the mountain road was gradually abandoned. Without the economy brought by merchants coming and going, the prosperous small town also began to decline. Now, as a sentry point for the Red Lotus Group, it had regained some popularity. However, no one had paid attention to that mountain road for a long time. Even if it was still drawn on the topographic map, no one would consider it, whether it was a march to war or a business trip. After Yang Si's explanation, Li Yun finally understood Yang Si's little plan. He said, "Mr. Yang, do you mean that we should use this mountain road to raid Jinmen District and Fenghu District separately?" Yang Si shook his head and said, "Although the Red Lotus Group is a motley crew, they have a large number of people. If we split our forces to attack, I'm afraid there will be obstacles, which will be disadvantageous to us. According to the situation on the mountain road, I suggest that we focus on attacking Jinmen District first. Look here, although the mountain road leading to Jinmen District is longer than the other one, the slope is gentler, which can help the soldiers save energy. It will also be convenient to attack the city when the time comes." According to his plan, it was best to concentrate the troops on a surprise attack on one county and then plot other things after capturing it. They did not have as many troops as the Red Lotus Group, so it was not safe to split up. Li Yun made a sound of agreement and had another question. "If we use the mountain road, what about the siege weapons? Since it is a mountain road that has been abandoned for many years, it is not very strong. The soldiers can still pass if they are careful, but if they bring ladders or siege logs, it will be dangerous. If there are no siege weapons, even if we transfer 20,000 elite troops over, They can still delay us by relying on the city walls. Even if they won, they would probably have to ruthlessly dig out a piece of flesh. The troops that had been trained for so long were all elites and treasures in the eyes of the generals. If they died in a siege battle without siege weapons, it would be a somewhat unjust death. Since Yang Si dared to suggest this, he naturally had a countermeasure. The corners of his lips curled up a little, and he turned to face Jiang Pingji. This matter naturally depends on District Magistrate Lu. Li Yun was surprised. What does this have to do with the Lord? Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows frivolously, her posture calm and unruffled. Faced with Yang Si suddenly throwing the blame at her, she steadily caught it. She said, just as Han Mei said, it is difficult to transport siege weapons through the mountain road. If that is the case, then we will not transport them. Li Yun was anxious and hurriedly said, but my lord, if there are no siege weapons, how can the soldiers climb up the city walls? Meng Hun, who was sitting next to Li Yun, secretly tugged at his sleeves, indicating that he should not be so agitated. Only then did Li Yun realize that he had stood up agitatedly, giving off a sense of déjà vu. His handsome face blushed and he obediently returned to his seat. He apologized, I lost my composure just now, please forgive me, my lord. Chapter 623. The Spy? Although everyone knew about this battle plan relied too much on the performance of the spy. It could be said that the success of the spy depended on whether the spy's performance was good. If the spy's acting skills were good and he fooled the Red Lotus group, he would definitely succeed. But what if the spy's acting skills were awkward, were exposed, or didn't meet the expected standards? They feigned an attack on Fenghu County and focused on Jinmen County. If the Red Lotus group didn't withdraw their troops from Jinmen County, it would be awkward. Su Ku and the others were a little worried that they would place their hopes on an unknown spy without a proper way out. Among those present, only Wei Si was confident. Not only did he understand Jiang Pingji, but he also understood An Chui. With regards to Jiang Pingji, Wei Si could at most speculate her mood and plans through her words and actions, but she liked to play her cards unpredictably. It was good enough that Wei Si could guess correctly once or twice out of 10 times. Wei Si had been with him for many years. He had long understood this person thoroughly. If the acting skills of all the feudal vassals were ranked, An Chui would definitely be in the top 3. The conditions offered by Jiang Pingji were too tempting. An Chui would bite the bait even if he knew it was a trap, not to mention that he hadn't discovered it yet. As long as he helped Jiang Pingji conquer Qingda County, An Chui could take half of the captured men and money. The royal family of Dongqing had issued an edict to rescue the emperor. An Chui wanted to use this springboard to develop. The 10% of the men and money that Jiang Pingji promised him were extremely important. Jiang Pingji wanted to use Qingda County to expand her military strength and land. She wanted to suppress the aristocrats in Xiangyang County and stabilize her foundation. An Chui also wanted to use 10% of the men as capital to join the ranks of the Rescue the Emperor forces and take the opportunity to develop. Their interests were the same. An Chui yearned for victory even more than Jiang Pingji. Under this kind of temptation, even without the urging of others, An Chui would do his best to make this happen. He would do everything he could to make this happen. Just as Wei Si was thinking about how to dispel everyone's worries and reassure them, Jiang Pingji spoke. She said, everyone's worries are not without reason. I've thought about it carefully and intend to tell you something. Wei Si's heart skipped a beat. He was about to speak, but he was still a step too late. Jiang Pingji said, I plan to lead the vanguard battalion in this attack. These few words were like firecrackers thrown into a pot of boiling water, causing an explosion. Needless to say, both the strategists led by Su Ku and the generals led by Meng Hun were firmly against it. They knew that Jiang Pingji fought bravely, but their lord was the one who kept watch at the rear and stabilized the situation. If she ran to the front line to kill the enemy and exposed her identity, the enemy would focus on her. What should she do then? No matter how brave a person was, when faced with thousands of blades, he could only wait to be chopped into minced meat. Yang Si was surprised. He didn't seem to have expected Jiang Pingji's solution to be this. He had never seen how Jiang Pingji looked like when she killed people. He thought she was just being arrogant and liked to play the hero. He suddenly had a headache. Magistrate Liu, you should consider the bigger picture. As everyone's lord, how could you disregard the danger and personally go into battle? It was one thing for her to go into battle personally, but she still wanted to lead the Vanguard Battalion. What was the Vanguard Battalion for? The Vanguard Battalion was responsible for scouting the path for the entire army, scouting the enemy's situation, checking out the terrain, or conducting reconnaissance or probing attacks in order to disrupt the enemy's formation and boost their morale. The tasks were arduous, and were usually made up of the most elite soldiers of the entire army. In other words, the Vanguard Battalion was the first unit in the army to fight with the enemy. Under normal circumstances, the reduction of members would start from the Vanguard Battalion. Entering the Vanguard Battalion meant that one could go and meet the King of Hell. Everyone's obstructions and objections drifted into her left ear and out of her right ear. No matter how eloquent their words were, she remained unmoved. Seeing the familiar scene, the audience in the livestream room expressed their delight. Tomorrow Gaokao La, haha, don't you think this scene is familiar? When we attacked Qingan district previously, the streamer also wanted to go to the front line, but in the end, she was stopped by the little princesses under her. Now, the team of the little princesses has expanded further, and there are more people obstructing the streamer. Should we take a gamble and see if the streamer or the little princesses will win? Cheering little angels. #despise. You all said that they are the little princesses. According to the streamer's habit of spoiling them, they will definitely be persuaded in the end. Putting aside this point, the battlefield has no eyes. As the backbone, the streamer is indeed not suitable to take risks. Shirging, you are Olha. Am I the only one who feels sorry for the streamer? She is actually more suitable to be a general, not a lord. As a general, she can fight on the battlefield and unleash her wild nature. She can take the head of the enemy's general amidst thousands of troops and make the enemy tremble in fear. However, Jiang Pingji was everyone's backbone and their lord. She had become a panda that was protected in disguise. Perfect 10 beauties. The commenter above is not alone. Every time I see the little princesses obstructing the streamer, I feel uncomfortable. If it happens a few more times, I will turn from a fan to a hater. The streamer is a tiger or a lion, not a panda that is locked up in a zoo and carefully served. There was a lot of discussion on the bullet screen in the livestream room. Naturally, Jiang Pingji did not miss it. The idle audience compared her to a panda that was being protected, and the strategists and generals as little princesses. She felt that it was quite fitting. Then, there is no need to persuade me anymore. I have made up my mind. Jiang Pingji's gaze became determined. If she continued to be trapped here and was associated with a bunch of government affairs all day, she had almost forgotten how exhilarating it was to ride a horse and kill the enemy was. I will lead the Vanguard Battalion. This time, we must conquer Jinmen district with the fastest speed and the lowest casualties. Apart from me, who among the generals can do it? This matter is decided. Meng Hun and the others had fought with Jiang Pingji before. Whether it was one-on-one combat or leading troops into battle, there was indeed a huge gap between them and Jiang Pingji. Yang Si was stunned and could not help but turn his gaze to Jiang Pingji. After the meeting, Yang Si pulled Wei Si aside and whispered into his ear. "This lord of yours? Can she still go to the battlefield with such a small body?" Wei Si was still immersed in his own thoughts. He was interrupted by Yang Si. He raised his head and said in a slightly mocking tone, "My lord's martial arts are extraordinary and she is brave and invincible. Why can't she go to the battlefield? Let's not talk about anything else. If you were her opponent, you wouldn't be able to defeat her even if she gave you a handicap of 2 legs, 1 hand and 4 fingers." Yang Si almost choked on Wei Si's words. What was wrong with Wei Si? The moment he opened his mouth, he ended the conversation. Is she really as powerful as you say? Yang Si revealed a doubtful expression. Jiang Pingji was not short, but her figure was not burly. She looked a little lean and did not look like she could fight. Wei Si urged, If you don't believe me, why don't you give it a try? But come to think of it, why did you suddenly make such a suggestion? Xianxia was just a part-time worker. He stayed behind for the sake of delicious food, but now he took the initiative to offer a suggestion. Xianxia looked away and said angrily, "Do you think I want to? Don't you think about your lord's temperament? Once I've boarded this pirate ship, can I still leave? If Lu Shi was just a small district magistrate, I naturally wouldn't be afraid. Now that he's about to become the magistrate, how can I escape?" Chapter 624. Xianxia was indeed a little scared. He didn't expect Jiang Pingji to develop so quickly. In just 1 or 2 years, she had transformed from a vacant district magistrate in Xiangyang district, which was occupied by the Tsing-Yi army, to the prefecture magistrate, who practically controlled a state. For many people who had been through the ups and downs of officialdom, it was a long road that could not be completed in a lifetime from a county magistrate to a prefecture governor. The more Xianxia understood Jiang Pingji, the stronger the sense of urgency in his heart. You could say that he was a coward or afraid of death, but no matter what, it was better than losing his life. Wei Si and Xianxia had known each other for many years. It was easy for smart people to communicate. The two of them did not need to speak too clearly and they could understand each other's thoughts. In the words of the livestream viewers, these two guys seemed to have slept together. The gayer they were, the stronger they were. In that case, Wei Si folded his hands into his sleeves and said with a faint smile, "Are you going to change the way you address my lord?" Xia's expression stiffened and his face turned a little darker. After a while, he stammered, "No matter what, I'm also a talented person. If I admit defeat so easily, where do you want me to put my face? It's fine if you want me to change my words, but first, let your master express something." Back then, he had said it in a loud and clear voice, making a solemn vow. In the past, his words were still lingering in his ears. If Xianxia took the initiative to give in, wouldn't it be a slap in the face? No matter what, he had to be reserved for a period of time. If he took the initiative to throw himself at her, what if she didn't take it seriously? When Jiang Pingji saw his talents and usefulness, she would take the initiative to extend an olive branch to him. Only then could there be harmony between the ruler and the minister. Wei Si lifted his sleeves and covered the smile at the corner of his lips. He said, "If you want to wait for the Lord to open her mouth and admit defeat, I'm afraid it will be difficult. Jingrong, you've been with Her Highness for some time. When have you ever seen her give in to anyone? Don't blame me for not reminding you that you still have a bad debt with Prince Changsho. If Prince Changsho remembers it and starts to pursue the old debt of you teasing him, Tiskasi?" Wei Si shook his head regretfully as he spoke. Xi's expression seemed to be cramping up. "You've touched my sore spot. Can you not mention Prince Changsho?" After Wei Si's reminder, Xianxia remembered a very deceitful matter. When he jumped ship from Prince Changsho's side, he dug a big hole for Prince Changsho. If Xianxia had not secretly taken revenge on Prince Changsho, causing the front line to lose the battle, according to the situation at that time, Prince Changsho would have conquered Chenzhou long ago, killed the emperor, and ascended to the throne. How could he have been in a stalemate for more than a year, turned from the original advantage to disadvantage, and faced the predicament of retreating because of a lack of food? It could be said that if Meng Zhan hadn't intervened to form an alliance, Prince Changsho wouldn't have been able to hold on and would have retreated back to his fief. If one were to say who Prince Changsho hated the most, Xianxia would definitely be in the top 3. Wei Si smiled. Dimples appeared on his handsome face, giving people the illusion that 100 flowers were blooming at the same time, and in an instant, they saw all the peerless beauties in the world. All right, let's not talk about this anymore." Wei Si walked side by side with Xianxia, and there was a smile in between his words. In the beginning, he promised to be fine, but in the latter half of his sentence, he changed the topic. However, Si and Jingrong have known each other for many years. "There is one thing that I must remind you of." Xianxia asked him with a sullen face, "What is it?" Wei Si said straightforwardly, "In such a big Dongqing, who else can protect you other than the Lord? The Lord is like a donkey. She won't walk when you're led, but will retreat when you beat her. The more you force her, the more she likes to be stubborn. To put it bluntly, she's willful. Jing Rong has always called her District Magistrate Lu. Have you ever seen her mind? I'm afraid it's impossible to expect her to give in first. However, if Jing Rong doesn't give in, her life will be in danger. Yang Xi's face was already as black as the bottom of a pot. His hands were itching, and he really wanted to strangle Wei Ci to death. In the past, when he saw Wei Ci, he felt that he was a bright and noble person. Now that he looked at Wei Ci again, he felt that he might have been blind. When this person was split open with a knife, his flesh and blood were all black, not to mention his heart. Go ahead and be sarcastic. If you don't watch your mouth, be careful that you don't fall one day. Yang Xi snorted through his nose, and he seemed to be extremely angry. The two good friends bickered endlessly, and they left the government office together. Su Ku and the others were also busy with work, so they took their leave one after another. Only Qiguan Rang slowly rubbed against the mat, unwilling to get up. When everyone had left, Jiang Pingji's gaze fell on Qiguan Rang. She asked, "Wen Zheng, what's the outcome of the matter I asked you to ask?" Qiguan Rang nervously pinched his beard. His intuition told him that something big was going to happen, but Jiang Pingji's expression was still calm, which made him fearful. "My lord," Qiguan Rang's lips moved, and he could only squeeze out 2 words after opening his mouth. He did not have the confidence that he usually had. Jiang Pingji chuckled. She temporarily closed the streaming room and said, "Say it. No matter what the outcome is, your lord will be able to bear it. I asked you to write a letter to Master Wei Yuan. Looking at the time, there should be a reply by now." Qiguan Rang hesitated for a while, and after some deliberation, he told her the contents of Master Wei Yuan's letter. Jiang Pingji listened with a calm expression. The more she acted like this, the more Qiguan Rang felt frightened. Finally, "My lord, I think this matter might be a misunderstanding." "Please, my lord." Jiang Pingji lowered her eyes and chuckled. Her expression did not show the slightest hint of worry. "Wen Zheng, you don't have to persuade me or comfort me. I've been aware of this for a long time, but I don't have any evidence." Jiang Pingji curled her lips. Her nonchalant attitude was very natural, and there was not a single flaw in it. "Moreover, Wen Zheng, this matter is far more complicated than you think. It may even involve areas that ordinary people can't imagine. However, I am confident that I can solve it. I am the lord you chose, so you must have some confidence. If I can't even handle such a matter, won't I be letting down your trust in me?" Although Qiguan Rang's mind was treacherous, and his scheming style seemed to be similar to Yang Xi and Feng Zhen's, there were differences between the three of them. Yang Xi loved to use tricks and schemes, but he could see the facts clearly, distinguish the severity of the situation, and was the best at judging the situation. Feng Zhen loved to do things recklessly, and he did everything according to his whims. His train of thought was cunning, and his schemes were strange and ever-changing. As for Qiguan Rang, he had some of the characteristics of Yang Xi and Feng Zhen, but he was also different from them. Feng Zhen loved to show off, but Qiguan Rang did not like to stand out. He engraved the words, "Be wise and play safe," into his bones. Yang Xi's weakness was very obvious. If the situation was stronger than him, he would give in. Qiguan Rang was quite stubborn in a certain aspect, and he had very strong principles. Be wise and play safe did not mean go along with the flow. Qiguan Rang was like this, yet he chose Jiang Pingji. He had almost bet everything on her. Not for anything else, but for the trust and loyalty of the group of little princesses under her, Jiang Pingji would not allow herself to lose. Jiang Pingji's attitude was firm. Qiguan Rang could only swallow the words that were in his stomach. Since his lord had already made a decision, he did not say anything more. Chapter 625. They were silent for a while. Qiguan Rang asked cautiously, "If that's the case, how does my lord plan to deal with it?" Jiang Pingji snorted and said, "I'll pretend that I don't know for now. I want to see how long that person can endure. I've already found a clue as to his motive. I'm curious to see what his expression will be like when his schemes come to naught. Qiguan Rang knew too little about the inside story, so he was confused. But Jiang Pingji's tone made him shudder with fear. Then we just leave it like this? Don't we have to take precautions? Qiguan Rang asked. Jiang Pingji raised her brows and smiled slyly. She said with certainty, before I become the ruler of the world, that person won't lay a hand on me. Not only will he not be a burden, but he will also do his best to help. It's a free gift, so I'll take it. That person thinks that I don't know anything and even set up layers of barriers to mislead me. He doesn't know that sometimes being too thorough can also be a flaw. Qiguan Rang thought that Jiang Pingji was done, so she added another sentence. No one else can know about this matter after it comes out of your mouth and passes through my ears. She never hit someone unprepared. Wei Yuan's reply seemed to have no content, but Jiang Pingji had already grasped the crux of the matter. Scheming, right? Do you really think that all the smart people in the world are dead? Since they want to hurt each other, let's see who's more clever. Jiang Pingji raised her hand and rubbed between her brows. She said, Wenjing, help me draft a letter. Qiguan Rang asked subconsciously, to whom? Jiang Pingji replied, to my father. Speaking of which, my brother is 12 years old this year. It's not good to always stay in Hejin County. He should have an elder to guide him. I'm busy with work, but my father is free. Let him guide him. Although he's a son of a concubine, his surname is also Lu. If he grows up crooked, won't it be a disgrace to the family? By doing this, we can beat that person up without alerting him. Lu Shi was also very powerful. Lu Huan, the daughter of Prince Changshu and Wang Huiyun, eventually married into the Dongqing royal family and married the son of the emperor and Wang Huiyun. They had the same mother but different fathers. The siblings were in a mess. Lu Shi, the mastermind, gained a wave of sympathy from passers-by. As for this bastard son, his identity was also quite impressive. Who said that women were petty? When a man held a grudge, his means of revenge were even more terrifying. Jiang Pingji had never thought that there would be so many demons and monsters gathered in the small backyard of the Lus. Qiguan Rang's expression froze. He thought that Jiang Pingji had suffered a great blow, which was why she said that. He looked closely and realized that she was very clear-headed. Yes. Qiguan Rang agreed. Jiang Pingji happily ended the topic and swept away the gloomy atmosphere from before. She turned to ask Qiguan Rang about his opinion on Yang Xi's scheme. Qiguan Rang appreciated Yang Xi's stratagem very much. He was very good at using fake and real. Fighting a war was never a simple matter. Strange and treacherous schemes often had unexpected benefits. They had planted spies in the Red Lotus group. If they operated properly, taking down Jinmen County was a sure thing. The only flaw was, Qiguan Rang's expression was grave. My lord's loyal and devoted elite soldiers and generals, why take the risk? The lords of other families wished they could stay at home, always remembering that a gentleman does not stand under a collapsing wall. On the other hand, his lord was thinking about how to run out every day. If she made a mistake, no one knew where she would have run off to. Previously, there were many people around, so Qiguan Rang did not speak much to persuade her. Now that there were only the two of them, there was no need to worry about many things. Jiang Pingji was also very straightforward. Wen Zheng, do you still remember what I was like when you first met me? I did whatever I wanted to do, and no one could force me to do what I didn't want to do. I was the playboy from Hejin County. Ever since I became the magistrate of Xiangyang district, I feel like I've been restrained, like a fierce tiger locked in a cage. The sharp teeth of a fierce tiger are used to bite its prey, not to be admired. After hearing this, Qiguan Rang's face turned pale and he hurriedly explained. Why would my lord have such an idea? No one else has ever thought of restraining my lord. He was really frightened. It was really frightening to be accused of such a serious crime. Jiang Pingji said, I know you're worried about me because I'm your lord, your backbone. If I die, the forces that we've conquered will also collapse. But Wen Zheng, have you ever seen a general cowering behind his soldiers because he's afraid of dying in battle? When hasn't he charged and broken through enemy lines, running at the forefront? I'm your lord, but I can also be a general who is good at war. There's no conflict between the two. Believe me, I'll lead you to the most honorable position in the world. Those who did not understand Jiang Pingji would think that the youth was too arrogant to the extreme. But those who knew her knew that her arrogance would become reality in the end. She said leisurely, "Wen Zheng, if you're really worried about me, why don't you take care of the rear so that I don't have to worry about fighting at the front lines?" Qiguan Rang was choked by these hooligan words. When it came to acting shamelessly, who was better at it than his lord? She played the emotional card, acted pitiful, pretended to be innocent, stirred up emotions, and evaded the topic. Even if it was Qiguan Rang, he would not be able to handle it. Hence, many attempts to dissuade her to no avail. It became an established fact that Jiang Pingji would lead the vanguard battalion. The soldiers below did not know the bitterness of the strategists. When they heard that the commander of this expedition was their lord, they all seemed to be on steroids. The battle had not yet begun, but their morale was already high. Jiang Pingji was a non-mainstream lord. The place she most often stayed was not the government office, but the woodworking workshop and the military camp. She would patrol there every few days. Occasionally, when she sparred with Li Yun, Meng Hun, and Luo Yu on the drill ground, there would always be soldiers who liked to watch the fun secretly watching. For many soldiers, their lord was not a high and mighty deity. Instead, she was a valiant and extraordinary man with nimble skills. In layman's terms, Jiang Pingji was very down-to-earth. Her actions invisibly shortened the distance between the role of the lord and the soldiers, making the former more approachable to the people. In the face of such a situation, no matter how worried the strategists were, they could only swallow their bitterness. The soldiers had such high expectations of their lord. If they persuaded Jiang Pingji to withdraw from the front lines, it would be a huge blow to their morale. Fengyi County and Chengde County were not far apart. The movement of the troops here had alarmed the Red Lotus Group. The Tsing-Yi army was already like a grasshopper at the end of autumn. They could not jump around for more than a few days. If they were to deal with the Tsing-Yi army, there was no need for such a large number of troops. Obviously, the transfer of troops from Fengyi County was directed at the Red Lotus Group. When the higher-ups of the Red Lotus Group heard this news, their expressions were as grave as still water. One by one, they could not help but criticize Jiang Pingji in their hearts. Chapter 626. Jiang Pingji's unreasonable actions caused the Red Lotus Group to panic. The faces of the cult's higher-ups were as dark as if their parents had died. They knew that they were the target of Jiang Pingji's expedition, but they still prayed in their hearts that she was going to find trouble with someone else. As time passed, the information sent back by the informants decreased. The higher-ups began to feel restless. The reason why I called everyone here today is to discuss countermeasures. The chief has not slept well for many days because of this matter. As the chief's right-hand men, we should share the chief's burdens and solve his problems. I wonder if everyone has any good countermeasures? He was a handsome and refined young scholar. He looked reserved and shy, but he was full of bad ideas. Before the troubled times, he was a wastrel who cheated and fooled around with widows all day long. Taking advantage of the earthquake in Shangjing, he rose to become a high-ranking member of the Red Lotus Group. He was trusted by the sect leader, and he often used the sect leader's authority as a token of his authority to bully his followers. And Chui was among the crowd. With Jiang Pingji's financial and material assistance, and Chui's plan to win over the hearts of the people went even more smoothly. How could a group of illiterate, ignorant people from the wilderness be a match for Chui, who had a glib tongue? Even if they were wary at first, after being tricked by Chui, they wished they could dig out their hearts and be on his good side. Therefore, Chui rose from a small leader to a leader who was neither too big nor too small. He was qualified to participate in such a meeting. Just as Wei Ci ridiculed, Chui's acting skills were superb. In the era of live streaming, winning an Oscar would be a piece of cake. He wanted Jiang Pingji to win more than anyone else, so he worked harder than anyone else. If Jiang Pingji won, the chips that Chui had bet on her would increase. Only then would they have value. Faced with the questions of the higher-ups, the group of illiterate boorish men looked at each other in dismay. Wasn't it a joke to ask them to come up with a plan? The atmosphere at the scene was awkward. The scholar seemed to realize this as well. His cheeks turned slightly red, and a hint of embarrassment appeared on his face. He would only ask a group of ignorant boorish men if there was something wrong with his brain. What good ideas could a group of guys with only muscles for brains have? Just as he was thinking about how to bring the topic back and ease the atmosphere, Chui stepped forward. Compared to those brawny and boorish men who didn't wash for 10 days to half a month, Chui, this refined and noble person, was clearly different. Chui, who stood out like a crane in a flock of chickens, stepped forward and said, "This lowly one is willing to contribute his meager strength to the cause of sect master's hegemony." The scholar's eyes lit up. He could smell the scent of his own kind. He quickly asked, "What's your name?" Chui revealed his background, and he did not hide his real name. After all, with the level of the Red Lotus group, it was destined that they would not know who Chui was. "Did you just say that you have an idea?" The scholar asked in a genteel manner, addressing Chui by his courtesy name. "Duishi, tell me quickly. 1 cannot outsmart 2 and 2 cannot outsmart 3. As the strategist that the leader of the Red Lotus group relied heavily on, the scholar's ups and downs were still manageable for ordinary people, but when faced with a strong enemy like Jiang Pingji, his limited knowledge seemed to be stretched thin. Therefore, in order to maintain the supreme leader's trust, he called for this meeting. It was better to have a group of people think of a solution than him alone. Seeing Chui, the scholar felt that he saw hope. Chui's appearance was secondary. The key was his refined and noble aura. At a glance, one could tell that he had a good upbringing and was literate. The scholar stubbornly believed that a scholar was definitely smarter than a boorish man. Chui deliberated for a moment, then said unhurriedly, "In my opinion, now is not the time to be anxious." The scholar's brows furrowed, and he was a little displeased. If he was not anxious now, should he wait until a knife was held to his neck? However, it was rare to find a scholar, so the scholar tolerated it. "Why do you say that?" Chui straightened his chest and said energetically, "I heard that the Emperor of Dongqing has issued an edict to rescue the Emperor, ordering the heroes of the world to go rescue the Emperor. This Lu Shi controls Fengyi County and Shangyang County, and has 30,000 to 40,000 troops. Naturally, he will also go rescue the Emperor. If this person does not go, he will be a traitor, and all the heroes of the world will have the right to punish him. Therefore, Lu Shi must go rescue the Emperor." The scholar was surprised for a moment, and a new expression appeared on his face. Why hadn't he thought of this? He looked as if he had been inspired and analyzed the situation. "So, Lu Shi did not mobilize his troops to attack us, but to go south to rescue the Emperor?" Even a dedicated veteran like Chui felt that he could not continue acting in the face of the naive scholar. Who gave the Red Lotus leader the courage to let such an idiot be a military counselor? His brain must have been kicked by a donkey. If Lu Shi mobilized his troops to rescue the Emperor, how could he not have even prepared for the new year? According to the current situation in Dongqing, which major force would take the half-dead Dongqing royal family seriously? Because the scholar was the brain of the Red Lotus group and played the role of a counselor, Chui had to give him face. Therefore, he said, "There is such a possibility." The scholar was just about to breathe a sigh of relief. As long as they were not fighting the Red Lotus group, however, Chui added another sentence. "However, after careful consideration, I fear that Lu Shi's intentions are not with us, but with the Red Lotus group." The scholar had just breathed a sigh of relief, but he was once again worried. "What?" Chui smiled. With a confident demeanor, he said, "Lu Shi has already stabilized Fengyi County and took over Shangyang County in the winter. Everyone knew what the situation was like in Shangyang County. My group and the Tsing-Yi army have attacked repeatedly, but we have not been able to conquer it. In other words, Lu Shi has taken over Shangyang County, and his strength is still intact. With the troops from Shangyang County and Fengyi County, this person's power is at its peak. If I were Lu Shi, I would naturally hope to take advantage of this momentum and take down Qingde County in one go, so that I can unify Wanzhou. There were only 6 states in Dongqing, and Lu Shi alone occupied one. After hearing this, the scholar felt that it made sense. However, if he had been smarter, he would have realized that An Chui was only fooling him. An Chui spoke a lot, and it seemed to make sense, but in reality, it was useless. It was mostly nonsense. The scholar was impressed by An Chui's intelligence, but he was afraid that if he did not perform as well as An Chui, it would affect his prestige in the Red Lotus group. Therefore, the scholar invited An Chui to the back hall for a detailed discussion. As soon as they sat down, the scholar hurriedly asked, "Duo Shi, why did you say that you were in no hurry?" An Chui frowned secretly. He did not like people calling him by his courtesy name. However, he did not express this negative and irritated emotion. Instead, he looked excited, as if he was about to be put in an important position. Chapter 627. When the scholar heard this, his expression turned anxious. Isn't Lu Shi a little too greedy? He wants to rescue the emperor and attack our sect at the same time? He's not afraid of choking to death. An Chui was speechless again. Jiang Pengji and the Red Lotus group were enemies. If she did not take advantage of his weakness, would she love him with motherly love? An Chui said, "Don't be impatient, don't be impatient. I said there's no need to be anxious precisely because Lu Shi is too greedy. He wants to have the best of both worlds, so he must expand the results of the battle as quickly as possible. They can't afford to delay a battle if they follow the rules." The scholar was fascinated. He pricked up his ears for fear of missing a word. In this situation, Lu Shi can only concentrate his forces to attack one place. Our sect has many people and countless followers. Why would we be afraid of Lu Shi's mere tens of thousands of troops? If he wants to attack by force, we will concentrate our forces and delay them. After a long time, he will naturally retreat. The scholar nodded as he listened, then asked a stupid question. Why would he retreat voluntarily? An Chui choked. He really did not want to answer such a stupid question. Because it's to rescue the emperor. Lu Shi's time cannot be delayed. The scholar nodded his head in agreement. He finally understood. In other words, we just need to delay him? As long as they delayed him, Lu Shi would retreat without a fight. And Chui agreed, "That's exactly what I mean." The scholar asked again, "But how do we know where Lu Shi will attack?" Qingde County's terrain is not complicated, but it is vast. It is troublesome and a waste of time to send reinforcements. Duo Shi, where do you think Lu Shi will concentrate his forces to attack? An Chui lowered his eyes. With such a pig brain as a military advisor, it was no wonder that they could not suppress the Tsing-Yi army. The Red Lotus group had many people, but their brains were too stupid. This is why I said there's no need to be anxious. An Chui looked like he was giving advice. He smiled and said, "We wait for Lu Shi's next move. Lu Shi is fighting a long-distance battle, while we are defending. There are flat official roads in the county. We can move troops much faster than them. Instead of worrying and panicking now and making the people panic, it is better to sit on the fishing platform and wait for Lu Shi to come to us. No matter where he attacks, as long as we keep an eye on him, no matter how he attacks, we will be able to gain the upper hand." An Chui had given the Red Lotus group a solid blow, so much so that the scholar's bones went limp and his mentality swelled to the heavens. When the scholar heard this, his eyes lit up. He held Anne's hands and called her his confidant. An Chui chuckled. He would never befriend a pig. His expression was cold. The scholar asked a few more stupid questions in detail, and An Chui answered them in detail, without any intention of hiding anything. The scholar was very satisfied with their conversation. He patted An Chui's shoulder. "You've done well. You've done a great service this time. I'll definitely put in a good word for you in front of the cult master." An Chui revealed an expression of uncontrollable ecstasy on his face, but he pretended to be reserved and humbly declined. However, according to his preliminary test of the scholar, this person would not recommend him to the Red Lotus group's leader. Instead, he would hide him. The Red Lotus group did not need two equally smart strategists. If Xianxia was too smart and capable, it would make the scholar seem too stupid and useless. Xianxia was well aware of this little trick to suppress him. Anyway, he did not need the Red Lotus group's attention. Whether he put in a good word for him or not, it did not mean much to him. The Red Lotus group's leader trusted the scholar more, and Xianxia could not match this trust in a short period of time. As 007 that Jiang Pingji had planted, Xianxia needed the Red Lotus group's leader to believe his words without a doubt. The scholar was the best mouthpiece. As expected, the scholar turned around and reported to the Red Lotus group's leader. He modified Xianxia's words and shifted them to his own results, not mentioning Xianxia's existence at all. The Red Lotus group's leader was a stocky man who was less than 5 feet tall. His face was full of pockmarks, and to hide his ugliness, he kept a full beard. He and the scholar were from the same hometown. Before the uprising, they were on good terms. After the uprising, he trusted the scholar. He pinched his beard and muttered to himself for a while. "Will do as you say. I want to see what Lu Shi is capable of to dare offend a god." As mentioned before, the Tsing-Yi army were bandits, and the Red Lotus group were bandits with faith. This leader claimed to be the incarnation of a god who descended to save the people. But in reality, before he became the incarnation of a god, he was just a random doctor who had studied medicine for a few years. By chance, he had obtained a copy of the sect's doctrine that had been passed down during the chaotic times of the 16 kingdoms. After reading it, he felt that it made sense and spread it everywhere. However, the ancient books did not specify which sect it was, so he simply named it after his hometown, Red Lotus District. After a few years, he had accumulated a group of believers in his hometown, Red Lotus District, which laid the foundation for the uprising that followed. Coincidentally, there was an earthquake in Shangjing. The royal family moved the capital, disregarding the lives of the people. He simply raised the doctrine and led his followers in rebellion. If the Red Lotus group had been lucky and had not been stopped by the Tsing-Yi army, it was estimated that the Red Lotus group would have spread throughout the north. It was a pity that luck was not on their side. The Tsing-Yi army suddenly emerged as a new force, and they fought too fiercely with the Red Lotus group in the north. In the end, no one could do anything to the other, and no one could develop and grow stronger. Instead, it benefited Jiang Pingji. Because of his advice, the scholar received a large reward. This also strengthened his desire to continue suppressing Xianxia. However, in order to maintain such a high standard of intelligence, he still needed Xianxia to be his gunman. In order to further gain the scholar's trust, Xianxia then helped him solve 2 more problems. In the eyes of the Red Lotus group, their military counselor seemed to have turned on a cheat code. His body shone even more brightly. At the same time, Jiang Pingji had already made preparations for the expedition. The allocated rations were abundant, and the selected soldiers were also elites. Even though they stood in the cold wind, their postures were still tall and straight. Jiang Pingji stepped onto the platform and officially announced that she would be the commander-in-chief of the Vanguard Battalion. This time, Li Yun was also promoted from deputy captain to captain. He led the right wing and coordinated with the Vanguard Battalion and the middle troops. This time, Meng Hun stayed behind to look after the home. Luo Yu was responsible for the transportation of rations in the rear and shouldered various logistical matters. Dian Yan was appointed deputy captain of the Vanguard Battalion and charged forward with Jiang Pingji. The women's battalion led by Jiang Nongqin was the vanguard to support the Vanguard Battalion's offensive tactics. As for the strategists who would follow the army, Jiang Pingji considered the few people under her command and finally chose Yang Si. Qiguan Rang would oversee the middle troops, Wei Si and Su Ku would stay behind to look after the home, and Yang Si would follow the army into battle. When Yang Si learned of the results, he could not help but be speechless and gasp in surprise. "I really don't know if your lord is magnanimous or broad-minded. She even dares to put someone in an important position who has yet to surrender." Wei Si laughed and said, "Naturally, the Lord trusts the people she dares to use. What's more, you're the one who came up with the plan for the surprise attack this time. If I don't bring you along, who will I bring along? It's just that." I heard that the mountain road is treacherous. Jing Rong, you must be careful. Yang Xi's face darkened, like the ashes at the bottom of a pot. Chapter 628. The flags fluttered in the wind, and the howling cold wind rolled up the snow and ice. As a pregnant woman, White was treated like a little princess. The warhorse that accompanied them to the battle this time was replaced by Little White. The situation on the mountain road had been investigated in advance. Large-scale goods could not pass through, and the road was rugged and steep. The troops could only go into battle lightly. Jiang Pingji said, "Let's take down that small town first. The scouts that we send out should be quick-witted. Report back immediately if anything happens." Although it was a surprise attack, Jiang Pingji did not intend to be secretive. She brought a total of 10,000 troops and horses for this battle. The remaining 10,000 and the new recruits were left behind to guard the home. Apart from guarding the home, they were also responsible for the safety of the logistics and the supply route. If the supply route was cut off, the war could not be fought at all. Under normal circumstances, Jiang Pingji could take more people with her. However, the situation in Shangyang County had not been stabilized, so she could not transfer too many troops. She did not want to receive news that her home base had been destroyed after she had just won a great victory at the front line. Little White was gentle and reserved in front of Jiang Pingji and White, but it was like a different horse on the battlefield. Which man did not like a good horse? During the march, Yang Xi looked at Little White with envy. Little White seemed to sense his gaze and snorted in his direction. Yang Xi, who seemed to be despised by a horse, was speechless. The army set off. Other than the crunching of the snow, the howling wind, and the breathing of the people, there was no other movement in the air. Jiang Pingji was at ease. The march was rather boring, so she simply turned on the streaming room. In an instant, the audience in another dimension received a notification that they had to take advantage of their high hand speed. The 150,000 live stream slots were filled in an instant. Through the camera in the streaming room, the audience could clearly see the scene in front of the camera. It was several times clearer than the popular 1080p. The sky was dark and the snow was blowing. The color under the sky was slightly gray. Jiang Pingji was dressed in a red and white military uniform, which made her look handsome and heroic. Her figure, outlined by the armor, looked slender and well-proportioned. She did not look bloated or clumsy at all. The audience in the streaming room had long been used to her wide-sleeved scholarly or rough image. Now that she was dressed in armor and riding on a tall horse, she looked like a valiant young general who had walked out of a painting. They immediately howled like wolves and the bullet screen whistled. Guangguan Jujiu, oh, look what I caught, a handsome streamer. Red and white military uniform, the one on a snow-white horse. She stands in the wind and snow. She's like a goddess in my dreams. Streamer, do you still need a salted fish to warm your bed? Zai Zhizhou, eh? With salted fish warming the bed, wasn't he afraid that the bed would be filled with the smell of fish? I'm different. Host, look at me. I just used shampoo and washed myself from head to toe. I'm clean and I even have a nice fragrance when I walk. Let me warm the bed. I promise the bed won't smell like fish. Goddess Pingji, stop talking. My husband is here. He's wearing red clothes and silver armor, and he's riding a big horse. He looks exactly like the streamer. That's enough. I'm going to open the door for my dear husband. We're going to do some he exercises together at night. Jiawa QQ, you're all hysterical. No matter how handsome the streamer is, she's still a woman. Streamer Zheng Shangwo, mediocre person, do you know what love at first sight feels like? The moment I saw the streamer's figure, I decided that I wanted to be gay for her. Even if I had to bend into a mosquito coil, I'd be willing. She's only my husband. Streamer Sishangwo, hey, what's the big deal about being gay for the streamer? I'm even willing to straighten myself for the streamer. Jiang Pingji was secretly surprised to see the quarrel between the wives in the streaming room. This group of capricious fairies had a war of words some time ago over which of her counselors was the husband of the entire nation. What about now? With the streamer as their new love, they had forgotten about their old love. As the husband that 150,000 idle viewers were fighting over, Jiang Pingji found the boring military journey interesting. They stopped to rest midway. Jiang Pingji handed her portion of meat soup to Yang Si. Drink this to warm up. There are still a few days to the destination. Don't tire yourself out. Although Yang Si was a counselor, he belonged to the vanguard battalion. He had to ride a horse to withstand the wind and snow during the march. After a few hours, not only was the inner side of his thighs in pain from the abrasion, but his cheeks were also flushed red from the biting cold wind. He could barely feel them. He wore a circle-shaped scarf and a pair of wool gloves that Li Yun, the little angel, had made out of friendship. He was so cold that his shoulders were shivering. Although the literati of this era also practiced martial arts, their physiques were still much weaker than those of warriors. Trembling, he took the ceramic bowl that Jiang Pingji handed to him. He did not mind the heat and gulped it down in one gulp. The heat spread to his limbs and bones. Heaving a long and comfortable sigh, Yang Si let go of his thoughts. He suddenly thought of something and teased her. Such lousy weather, it's really cold. Fortunately it's me. If it were Zixiao, he'd probably fall sick from the wind. Jiang Pingji casually replied, I know. His body hasn't recovered yet. I won't let him follow the army in this season. Yang Si was stunned after hearing that. He carefully pondered over the deeper meaning of her words. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. Did Lu Shi mean that, if the season was better, the person who followed the army would not be him but Wei Si? That shouldn't be the case, right? Jiang Pingji smiled and said, yes, it's exactly what you're thinking. Yang Si was speechless. He really wanted to smash the ceramic bowl in his hand, along with the meat soup inside, onto Jiang Pingji's forehead. What did he do wrong in his previous life to offend Wei Si and Jiang Pingji? Did he have to be mocked by them in this life? Sob, sob, sob. He felt wronged. If he and Jiang Pingji fell out, it was definitely because she and Wei Si's mouths were too vicious. Jiang Pingji added with a smile to salvage Yang Si's emotional state, which was on the verge of a breakdown. Of course, Zixiao's health is one aspect. The other aspect is that Jing Rong is outstanding and shouldn't be neglected. Look how artistic she was with her words. It was obvious that she spared no effort to exploit Yang Si's labor and used the casual worker like a mule. In Jiang Pingji's words, it was said that she relied on and trusted Yang Si and could not bear for his talents to be buried. If it were a fool, he would probably be coaxed to tears. Obviously, Yang Si was not a fool, but he had no way to refute. Once again, he sighed with emotion. He had really boarded a pirate ship. If time could be reversed, Yang Si would definitely cling to Huang Song's thigh and never step into Fengyi County. Yang Si laughed coldly. In that case, I have to thank you for thinking highly of me and be deeply grateful? Sooner or later he had to accept his fate. Yang Si simply changed the way he addressed her. He looked like he had given up. Jiang Pingji seemed to not notice the change in how Yang Si addressed her. Her attitude was natural. There's no need to be deeply grateful, but I will continue to rely on you. The subtext was, continue to work overtime after returning from the war. I think very highly of you. Yang Si looked at the ceramic bowl in his hand. There was still half of the delicious meat soup left. Should he smash the bowl on Jiang Pingji's forehead when she was unprepared, or should he drink it himself? Chapter 629. There was a small town near the border between Jinmen County and Fenghu County. This small town used to be a small village deep in the mountains. During the chaotic times of the 16 Kingdoms, a mountain road was built here to connect the two counties. Commercial trade was frequent, and this place became a good place for merchants to stop and rest. Slowly, it became a small town with a large population. In the middle of the Great Xia dynasty, the government recruited corvée laborers to build the official road. The official road was flat and wide. In contrast, the mountain road was craggy and narrow, full of bumps and bumps. Soon, the mountain road was abandoned, and the popularity that had gathered because of the mountain road also dissipated. Now, this small city had been forcefully occupied by the Red Lotus group and had become their outpost. Jiang Pingji led the troops closer. Along the way, they discovered several enemy scouts, but they were all killed by the vanguard battalion. However, the Red Lotus group had developed from the commoners at the bottom of society. If they really wanted to spy on the situation, it would be impossible to guard against them. When Jiang Pingji was only an hour away from the small town, the news reached the hinterlands of the Red Lotus group. After the leader of the Red Lotus group heard this, he summoned his trusted aide, the scholar, and asked about the plan. The scholar was already used to finding An Chui to be his gunman. On the surface, he appeased the cult leader, but in his heart he memorized the information. This matter is quite suspicious. Lu Shi is a treacherous and cunning person. I'm afraid there's something fishy going on. The scholar pretended to be profound as he tried to think of a way to coax the Red Lotus group leader. Group leader, allow me to go back and think about this. I will definitely give you an answer in 4 hours at most. As soon as the leader of the Red Lotus group agreed, the scholar hurriedly went back to seek help from An Chui. An Chui had a script. When he learned that Jiang Pingji would attack the small town according to the original plan, he was overjoyed. He showed a serious expression and pretended to be suspicious. What's so special about that small city? Why did Lu Shi attack that place? The scholar echoed, yes, that place is very creepy. There are ferocious beasts everywhere. Is Lu Shi trying to enter the mountain to feed the mosquitoes? In a war, one should not attack on the main road. They did not play their cards according to common sense. An Chui rubbed his forehead with his hand, looking like he had a headache. This was not an act. He really had a headache. What a pig-like teammate. The Red Lotus group wanted to play with Jiang Pingji with their meager skills? Go to bed and sleep, everything is possible in your dreams. The scholar did not give An Chui a way out. He could only improvise and continue acting out the script. An Chui thought for a long time. Finally, he had an idea and realized that the commotion had scared the scholar. I've got it. An Chui's face was filled with uncontrollable joy. He said, that small town is located near Jinmen County and Fenghu County. Lu Shi wants to use a surprise attack on one of the counties. However, the scholar's intelligence couldn't keep up with the pace. He even asked An Chui stupidly, is that so? But that place is full of mountains. Who knows how much time it will take to climb over them? If you want to fight a fast-paced attack, it would be more reliable to take the main road. An Chui, no, this script is too difficult to act. An Chui said, no, I heard that there is a mountain path there that has been in use for many years. It connects Jinmen County and Fenghu County. Scholar. His first reaction was to immediately send people to block the mountain path, but An Chui dampened his enthusiasm. There's not enough time. I reckon that the small city has already been conquered by now. Moreover, there is more than one exit on the mountain path. We can't block it at all. We might even be surrounded by them. This strategy is too risky. The scholar seemed to have grabbed onto the last piece of driftwood. He hurriedly said, please give me a good strategy, master. Previously, the scholar had bossed An Chui around, but now he called him master. An Chui wasn't angry. He put on a professional act and said, although there are several exits on the mountain path, it only connects Jinmen County and Fenghu County. There's no doubt about this. According to the original plan, we only need to send a large number of troops to stall for time. When they can't help but retreat, we'll outflank them from behind and first block their retreat on the mountain path. In this way, we'll be able to catch a turtle in a jar and achieve a complete victory. Listening to An Chui describe the blueprint, the scholar's anxious and helpless little heart calmed down. Master, you're very talented. I'll definitely put in a good word for you in front of the chief. When the time comes, a high position and generous salary will be just around the corner. Some people could speak, such as Jiang Pingji. Some people couldn't speak and thought they were very good at it, such as the scholar. If An Chui wasn't acting, he would have been so angry at this person's words that he would have long since ascended to heaven. The scholar first boasted about An Chui, then asked carefully, in your opinion, which county will Lu Shi focus on attacking? Since the mountain path connected Fenghu County and Jinmen County, Lu Shi's goal should be one of these two counties. A 50% chance, which one was it? And Chui thought about the contents of the script and said, I've carefully thought about the situation on that mountain path. The mountain path to Jinmen County is too long. If a surprise attack is launched, I don't know how much physical strength it will take, and the marching time is too long. The mountain path to Fenghu County is relatively short, and the distance is only half that of Jinmen County. Comparing the two, I conclude that Lu Shi's target must be Fenghu County. The scholar nodded as he listened. Listening to An Chui's words was better than reading for 10 years. After a while, he said with emotion, this Lu Shi is really cunning and black-hearted. Although I'm a native of Qingda County, I didn't know that there was an abandoned mountain path there. It's too remote. If you weren't so talented and familiar with the geography, Lu Shi might have really succeeded. But now, we'll beat him at his own game. We'll capture Lu Shi alive and let him suffer heavy casualties. And Chui's lips revealed a mysterious smile. The scholar also revealed a smile of tacit understanding. The scholar comforted An Chui and turned to claim credit. He copied An Chui's words almost verbatim and suggested to the Red Lotus group leader, the opportunity doesn't come again. If we can capture Lu Shi now, we will have no more worries. Group leader, for the sake of our grand plan, we must be ruthless. The Red Lotus group leader asked him, tell me your opinion. The scholar's expression was slightly ferocious. His tone was light, but his thoughts were very vicious. He said, Group leader, why don't we transfer the people from Jinmen County to Fenghu County? When Lu Shi can't attack them, we can send people to attack the small town when he's unprepared. Then we can surround the mountain path from behind and catch them like a turtle in a jar. It would be best if we can capture Lu Shi alive. If that doesn't work, we can surround them and slowly torture them to death. Under the shadows, the scholar's face appeared very cold. The Red Lotus group leader thought about it and felt that this was a brilliant plan. Military counselor, you have a brilliant plan. This time, we must make sure that Lu Shi doesn't return. Although the small town was the Red Lotus group's sentry post, there weren't many people inside. There were only a few hundred scattered people. They couldn't even organize an effective defense. The highest point of the city wall was only slightly more than 10 feet. Who could be stopped by such a small height? Jiang Pingji held a long spear in her hand and mounted a horse to attack. Little White's strength in trampling people was no less than White's. With a single hoof, the sternum was shattered. She rushed to the front. Yang Xi's eyelids twitched as he watched, afraid that she would be shot by a stray arrow. Chapter 630. Jiang Pingji was dressed in red and silver armor. She was an obvious target in the snow. If the Red Lotus group didn't target her, who else would they target? But for Jiang Pingji, the sparse rain of arrows seemed to have slowed down by dozens of times. She wasn't crippled. Why couldn't she dodge? Realizing that Jiang Pingji was being targeted by arrows, Yang Xi was so frightened that he almost fell off his horse. However, it turned out that Wei Ci was right. Jiang Pingji fought him with 2 legs, 1 hand and 4 fingers. She could crush Yang Xi to death with 1 finger. Watching Jiang Pingji dance the long spear in her hand vigorously, the dense shadows of the spear almost turning into a shield wall. Arrows were deflected by her. Yang Xi's emotions went up and down as he watched. It was as if he was on a roller coaster. Little White galloped forward. As a top-grade steed, it had extremely strong explosive power and endurance. Soon, it left the rest of its kind behind. It galloped as fast as silver lightning. The walls of the small city were quickly approaching. Jiang Pingji's target was too obvious. She alone attracted almost all the firepower. Little White galloped in the rain of arrows with her on its back. Occasionally, 1 or 2 tricky arrows approached, but Little White could quickly change direction to avoid them. Such a scene almost caused an uproar in the live stream. Their perspective was relatively special. It was similar to a camera hanging above Jiang Pingji's head. As the audience, they could adjust the angle of the camera 360 degrees. They could even zoom in and out. This time, the camera gave them a bird's eye view. Not only could they see Jiang Pingji's back view as she galloped away, but they could also see the way she shot down the arrows. She was so fast that she left after images. Goddess Pingji, hubby, are you riding a tall white horse to marry me? Don't worry, I'll go downstairs and open the door for you. College entrance examination goes smoothly, I can't take it anymore. She's so cool. Can I dump the man next to me and marry the streamer? Good luck tomorrow, love rival? Let's fight. In order not to affect her mood, Jiang Pingji had long turned off the bullet screen in the live stream. No matter how much the idle audience howled, she couldn't see them for the time being. Relying on Little White's pace, Jiang Pingji easily rushed to the bottom of the city gate. The city wall was only 6 or 7 meters high. How could it stop the combination of Jiang Pingji and Little White? About 30 meters away from the city wall, Jiang Pingji put away her long spear, turned sideways, and bent over to avoid the arrows. She raised her hand to draw her longbow and a few arrows. Without looking, she pulled the bowstring to the fullest with her right hand and a few arrows flew out. The dull sound of a sharp weapon piercing through flesh could be heard. Several splatters of blood bloomed. The soldiers of the vanguard battalion had also caught up to support Jiang Pingji. In less than a breath's time, she once again shot out several arrows. Every arrow that left the bowstring would definitely take a life. By the time she had shot 4 waves of arrows, Little White had already braked its hooves. Jiang Pingji borrowed the momentum and left the horse's back. He took out the long rope from behind his waist and through the side with the iron hook. It coiled around the wall like a snake. When the Red Lotus group saw the tens of thousands of soldiers below the city walls, they were so scared that their legs turned to jelly. There were only a few hundred members of the Red Lotus group at the sentry post, not even 1,000 of them. Jiang Pingji had always liked a fast-paced attack. She would never give the enemy a chance to catch their breath. After the long rope was wrapped around the wall, her feet firmly stepped on the wall. While pulling the long rope, she tilted her body and kicked her feet to climb up. The city wall was 6 or 7 meters high. Before the Red Lotus group could react, she had already climbed up the city wall. What greeted them was the shiny silver spear in her hand. The soldiers below did not have Jiang Pingji's dashing maneuvers, but with her attracting the enemy's firepower, it was not difficult for them to climb up the city wall. The Red Lotus group naively thought that the small city could stop the advance of Jiang Pingji's army and buy them half a day's time. As it turned out, even the time it took to burn a stick of incense was too long. Faced with Jiang Pingji's menacing army, the Red Lotus group had long been scared to the point of wetting their pants. It had only been a short while, but the commander of the vanguard battalion had already climbed up the city wall and started a massacre on the city wall. She directly crushed their momentum and shattered it like glass shards. Following that, more soldiers climbed up the city wall, each one like wolves and tigers. Before the Red Lotus group could organize an effective defense, everything was over. Before the main army arrived, the small city had already been captured. Their efficiency could be said to be the best in the industry. Yang Xi's expression was complicated. Looking at the open city gate, he finally understood why Jiang Pingji wanted him to lead the vanguard battalion. The soldiers were fierce, and the generals were fierce. Only a fierce commander could lead an even more ferocious elite army. Jiang Pingji spoke very little when fighting. She disdained arguing with others. To quote the words of the viewers in the live stream room, "Society is my sister Pingji. She doesn't talk much. She doesn't talk. She directly confronts her." Jiang Pingji asked Yan Yan to lead the vanguard battalion to clean up the battlefield and count the soldiers who had been injured or killed by stray arrows. When the main army arrived, the city gate had already been opened. The arrows under the city wall had also been cleaned up by the soldiers. Except for the bloodstains that had not been cleaned up in time, it was almost impossible to see that a small-scale siege had broken out here. Even though Qiguan Rang was prepared, he was still shocked. "Let's rest for a day. At dawn tomorrow, we will prepare to enter the mountain road." Jiang Pingji narrowed her eyes slightly. She was still dressed in a red and white military uniform. There was not the slightest hint of warmth from before. Instead, There was a chilling murderous aura. Looking at the time, I think it's about time. Qiguanrang said, the mountain road is long. Should we pack lightly? After frowning, Xianxia suggested, it's better to bring 2 or 3 days' worth of dry rations. Although the Red Lotus group is just a motley crew, they are not completely brainless. If they attack our grain transport team, although it won't be fatal, it will still cause some trouble. Jiang Pingji sneered. Xianxia had really overestimated the intelligence of the Red Lotus group. Yes, let's do as Jing Rong says. Elsewhere, under the suggestion of his trusted scholar, the leader of the Red Lotus group transferred most of the guards in Jinmen County. Now, there were only a few thousand troops in the county, and they were all old, weak, and disabled soldiers. Coupled with the freezing weather, the combat power they could exert was almost zero. And Cui had already made preparations to respond. While contacting his informants, he also instructed the brothers guarding the city of Jinmen County to be alert. After making these preparations, Cui planned to stir up another wave of trouble. He passed on the scholar's deployment to Jiangpingji through his informants. When everyone saw it, they were speechless. Xianxia said disdainfully, their brains aren't that great, but their hearts are vicious. However, this 007 spy, Cui, was very good. His acting skills were off the charts. Let's act according to plan. First, send scouts into the mountain road. Once they discover that the troops in Jinmen County have withdrawn, report back immediately. In this era, communication was not convenient. If they could make good use of the time difference, they could completely toy with the enemy. She planned to take down Jinmen County as quickly as possible and attack another city before the Red Lotus group could react. Yes, Jiangpingji's appetite was not just a county. She planned to take down the entire Qingde County in one go. Chapter 631. Qingde County had a total of 4 counties, Jinmen County, Fenghu County, Honglian County, and Chuyu County. If the plan went smoothly, taking down Jinmen County would be as easy as pie. But Jinmen County could not satisfy Jiangpingji's appetite. Her ambition was far greater than that. The Red Lotus group thinks that we're beating them at their own game. We might as well imitate them. Qiguanrang sneered. He loved tricking people. According to my lord's prediction, how long will it take to take down Jinmen County? Jiangpingji narrowed her eyes and calculated. After a while, she said, although our march is in a hurry and we can't carry siege weapons, it will take at most 2 hours to take down Jinmen County, which is unguarded. If we include the time spent on the mountain road, it will take almost a day. What do you think, Wenjing? Qiguanrang held the feather fan that had never left his side and gently waved it. Xianxia, who was beside him, saw it and subconsciously shuddered. He silently shifted his position. He had seen eccentrics and pretentious people, but he had never seen someone waving a fan in the middle of winter. Qiguanrang said, according to the information from our informants, the Red Lotus group wants to exterminate us and has formulated a series of measures for this. They've worked so hard. If we don't give them a chance to perform, wouldn't it be too heartless? If the Red Lotus group wanted to trick them, then they could naturally do the same. Jiangpingji raised her eyebrows and motioned for Qiguanrang to continue. He said, the Red Lotus group thinks that we will attack Fenghu County with a large number of troops. If we don't show up for a long time, I'm afraid it will make them suspicious. Why don't we send some scouts to confuse them and make them think that our intention is Fenghu County, not Jinmen County? We'll delay as much as possible until my lord takes down Jinmen County, then we'll turn around and attack Fenghu County. After all, the mountain road to Fenghu County is very short. Xianxia was a little unhappy when he heard this. If that's the case, won't we become a tired army? It's on the mountain road again. According to the Red Lotus Group's plan, we'll be besieged on the mountain road and it'll be difficult to break through. Dian Yen couldn't help but ask. Realizing that everyone's eyes were on him, he silently shut his mouth. Jiangpingji tried to smooth things over. She said, Deputy Diane's words make sense, but if the plan was that simple, it wouldn't be Wenjing. Sure enough, Qiguanrang continued, indeed, in this way, we will become a weary army. If we are besieged on the mountain path, I'm afraid we won't be able to escape. However, what if we besiege the Red Lotus group on the mountain path? The situation will be completely different. Dian Yen felt like he was listening to a heavenly book. It was clear that they were the ones being besieged. How had it become the Red Lotus group being besieged? Jiang Pingji smiled and said, according to the Red Lotus group's calculations, aren't they planning to capture the small town, enter the mountain road, and surround us from both sides? Since that's the case, why don't we throw out the bait, lure them into the mountain path, and then trap them to death? Dian Yan's brain wasn't quick to react. After thinking for a long time, he suddenly realized that he was pretending to be a pig to eat the tiger. First, they would have the main force attack Jinmen County. At the same time, they would have scouts investigate the vicinity of Fenghu County. This would create the illusion that they intended to attack Fenghu County. Not only would it confuse the Red Lotus group's judgment, but it would also delay them. Once Jinmen County had been captured, they would turn around and return to set up an ambush. Then, they would send another team into the mountain road to create the illusion for the Red Lotus group that the main force had already entered the mountain road in the direction of Fenghu County. In reality, they were still hiding on the mountain road to Jinmen County. When the Red Lotus group saw this, they would definitely think that their prey had taken the bait. When they planned to enter the mountain road and cooperate with the troops of Fenghu County to outflank Jiangpingji, the main force of the ambush would appear again. The main force cooperated with the soldiers who had entered the mountain path earlier and worked together to take down this wave of sneak attacks from the enemy. Dian Yen had already shut his mouth obediently. As expected, these scholars were each more heartless than the other. While the others were still at the stage of being unable to resist, they were already thinking about how to counterattack the enemy. Qiguan Rang continued, this plan isn't difficult, but it's a little harsh. Time is too tight. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, what's wrong with that? Wen Zheng, just wait and see how I take down Jinmen County. Yang Si was about to say something sarcastic, but the image of Jiang Pengji taking the lead appeared in his mind at the right time. He also chose to remain silent. Qiguan Rang added, Jinmen County can be occupied with a surprise strategy, but the effect won't be as great if the same move is used a second time. As for the other 3 counties, in the end, we still have to fight with real swords and guns, determine the winner and the loser. Jiang Pingji didn't quite agree with Qiguan Rang's statement. Yang Si's surprise strategy could only be used once, but there was still room for him to make use of it. Once an opportunity was seized, it had to be fully utilized. Jiang Pingji pursed her lips and said, because the mountain road is fragile, we can't bring any siege equipment when we attack Jinmen County. However, once we take down Jinmen County, the situation will be different. Before I set off, I privately instructed Xiaoyu to prepare the siege equipment. I asked him to seize the opportunity and transport the equipment to Jinmen County on time. Based on the time spent on the road, Xiaoyu's siege equipment will arrive after we have rested for a day while we counter-encircle the Red Lotus group. While the Red Lotus group is flying around like a headless fly, we'll attack Chuyu County in one go. On the battlefield, one couldn't slack off at all. The opportunity was fleeting, and there was no time to lose. Jiang Pengji understood this principle, so she thought about it more thoroughly than anyone else. If they waited until Jinmen County was conquered before informing Suku to transport the siege equipment, they would have missed the best opportunity to fight back and forth for a few days. Her combat style was very distinct, fast-paced, and meticulous in her calculations. Others would proceed step by step in an orderly manner. Jiang Pingji, on the other hand, carried out multiple tasks at the same time. She pushed forward from all sides, one step after another, and used this to create a fast-paced sense of tension. In ancient times, communication was inconvenient. Jiang Pingji's combat style was even more urgent, and it could often cause mental oppression to the enemy. This kind of oppression could not only disrupt the enemy's heart, but it could also shake their morale. Everyone was surprised. After we're done with Jinmen County, we'll attack Chuyu County directly? Jiang Pingji said, the troops of 2 counties are concentrated in Fenghu County. Honglian County is the headquarters of the Red Lotus Group, and its defense is not weak. Besides Chuyu County, do we have any other choice? More importantly, the official road from Jinmen County to Chuyu County is flat and wide, and the distance is short, which is conducive to the transportation of siege equipment. With Chuyu County as the target, we can save a lot of time. For a motley crew like the Red Lotus Group, a major defeat could turn them into headless flies flying around aimlessly. Jiang Pingji had to seize the time. Before the Red Lotus Group regained its composure, she had to deliver a series of crazy blows to them. As long as Jinmen County and Chuyu County were stabilized, the Red Lotus Group would not be able to jump around again. Little did she know that in Chui, her teammate who had assisted her in the battle, could bring her another surprise. Night fell and shrouded the earth. A pure white moon hung in the sky. Jiang Pengji was leaning against it and taking a nap when a commotion suddenly came from her mind. Chapter 632. The noisy mechanical voice disturbed her sleep. Jiang Pengji, bastard Jiang Pengji, don't play dead, I know you're awake. If you have the guts to lock me up, answer me if you have the guts. Answer me. If you continue to pretend to be deaf and dumb, I'll annoy you for the whole night. I'll stop when you're willing to talk to me. The system muttered, and it even started a rhythm. It was difficult for Jiang Pingji to ignore it. She wanted to kill the system. What are you up to this time? Jiang Pingji asked in her heart coldly. She got up carefully and did not disturb anyone. She climbed up the city wall. The soldiers were still patrolling and keeping watch. Seeing Jiang Pingji's red and white military uniform, they all perked up and saluted. She waved her hand and said in a low voice, I just couldn't sleep at night, so I came out for a walk. You guys continue with your work, don't worry about me. The group of patrolling soldiers nodded slightly and moved sideways to avoid Jiang Pingji. She found a secluded corner. The cold night wind blew on her face, dispelling some of her sleepiness. System, you better give me a reasonable reason. Why are you suddenly disturbing me in the middle of the night? Do you want to die? The system retorted. Then why don't you kill one for me to see? Oh, you're fearless. Jiang Pingji narrowed her eyes dangerously. The reason why she chose to imprison the system instead of completely destroying it was because she was afraid that the system would find out and alert the enemy. Now it had become the system's capital to play tricks. She could not help but laugh. She did not know what the system was like, but this system, TSK, its IQ was really low. Times had changed. Did it think she would always be afraid? Jiang Pengji exhaled a white breath and asked in her heart, I still want to sleep, I don't want to talk nonsense with you. If you have something to say it quickly. If you continue to be pretentious, you can do whatever you want. Do you think I'll ignore you? That's the world of my brain, you better be clear about it. The system had been imprisoned by Jiang Pingji for almost 2 years. It had developed a subconscious fear of Jiang Pingji. It could not be afraid. Jiang Pingji was a shrewd person. She only provided the system with the points of popularity every day. To the system, popularity points were the energy it needed to survive and grow, similar to the food humans needed. Regardless of whether it was a human or a system, to be imprisoned in a silent world, to be given only the minimum amount of food every day to ensure that they would not starve to death, and to be imprisoned for 1 to 2 years at a time. If a human were to go crazy, even the system would not be able to handle it. There was a reason for it to cause a ruckus this time. The system stuttered. Can I discuss something with you? The originally arrogant system was now timid. Jiang Pengji did not know whether to laugh or cry. System, can you be any more cowardly? Reasonable things can be discussed. If you want me to let you go and give you freedom, you should just give up. The system hurriedly said, No, it's not about that, I mean. Can you restrain yourself a little for now? If it's possible, it's best to lock me up more tightly. It's been a bit special recently. I'm afraid that there might be dimensional merchants patrolling around. Planar merchants patrolling everywhere? Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows and her expression became solemn. What do you mean? The system said, I don't mean anything. Can you not be so guarded against me? I'm serious this time. Regardless of whether it's you or me, we absolutely cannot be caught by dimensional merchants with patrol orders, or else we're done for. We're now grasshoppers on the same rope. If I'm done for, you won't get any benefits either. If it weren't for Lu Shi's body, you would have long been expelled and exiled by the rules here. Jiang Pingji snorted softly. I don't care. None of the federal soldiers were afraid of death. The system was silent for a long time. You're really annoying. What do I have to do for you to agree? The system's coquettish grumble made Jiang Pingji frown deeply. Dimensional merchants with patrol orders? What's that? From what you're saying, you seem to be very afraid. The system said impatiently, Nonsense, have you ever seen a smuggler who isn't afraid of the police? Jiang Pingji was speechless. The system said, I'm the Dimensional Palace Intrigue Streaming System. Opening the streaming channel will temporarily open up a channel between two unrelated planes, causing the balance of several planes to be destroyed. That's why there are so-called reborns, or time travelers. Regardless of whether they're time travelers or reborns, they're all illegal immigrants without a license. As for the dimensional merchants with patrol orders, they're existences with licenses that allow them to travel between different planes. Jiang Pingji's interest was piqued, and some malice grew in her heart. If you're caught by them, what will happen to you? The system sneered, seeing through Jiang Pingji's plan. Jiang Pingji, I advise you not to have the idea of perishing together with them. Do you know how much energy is needed to open up the barrier between two planes? I'm of the same level as that dimensional merchant. If he catches me, he'll lock me up for a few years at most. He can't do anything to me. But you're different. You don't belong to this world. You're an anomaly that affects the original development of this plane. To put it bluntly, you're a pathogen. When the time comes, you'll die a horrible death. You can still live for many years. Isn't it good to be alive? Why must you go against me? Jiang Pingji wasn't the slightest bit afraid of the system that was outwardly fierce but inwardly weak. She laughed contemptuously, and the disdain in her words was undisguised. Is that so? So you're so powerful. Then why are you imprisoned in my spiritual realm? If the system had an expression, its face would definitely be as black as the bottom of a pot. If it hadn't been careless and Jiang Pingji had deliberately pretended to be a pig to eat a tiger, would it have been caught carelessly? The system had lived for a long time, but it was the first time it had fallen into the hands of its host. Therefore, it hated the kind of host that was smart but disobedient the most. Was it not good to be a little naive, a little stupid, and a little smart? Although the host would have to pay some small remuneration, at least the host would be a winner in life while he was alive. Being reborn, wearing the halo of a protagonist, the intelligence of the supporting characters would decrease collectively, and the host would cheat all the way to the peak of life. Wasn't it exciting to think about it? Unfortunately, he met Jiang Pingji, a freak. The system felt wronged and wanted to cry. Jiang Pingji said, You're full of lies and have too many criminal records. I believe at most 30% of what you say, and I'm skeptical of the other 70%. Your ridicule just now gave me inspiration. You said, which smuggler isn't afraid of the police? In that case, the dimensional merchant is the police, and you're the smuggler? You also said that you're of the same level as the dimensional merchant, but now you're trapped by me. TSK, there's a lot of information. I seem to know something. The system was faintly flustered. What do you mean by a lot of information? Jiang Pingji asked it in return with a natural expression. Why should I tell you? System. Jiang Pingji asked the system, what does the dimensional merchant look like? Does he have the same heart as you? The system was almost choked to the point of being speechless. What did she mean by having the same heart as me? Chapter 633. The system was exasperated. Hee. The patrolling merchants are just sanctimonious people. Regardless of whether they are reborn or time travelers, once they are discovered, they will be humanely destroyed. In terms of ruthlessness, they are even more ruthless than me. I will at least let the host die of old age, but he won't. The system tried hard to dispel Jiang Pingji's idea of stirring up trouble. If the system didn't need Jiang Pingji to hide its whereabouts and avoid the patrolling merchants, it wouldn't have revealed so much. It thought that Jiang Pingji would be frightened, but she nodded in agreement. There's nothing wrong with enforcing the law impartially. The system almost couldn't breathe. Who are you on the same boat with now? Don't forget, you are also a stowaway. If you are caught, the situation will be very serious. You will be killed and your soul will be destroyed. Fine. I promise you, whether it is me or the main body, we will not do anything to hurt you in the future. Big sister, now is not the time to be willful and mischievous. Jiang Pingji smiled. You and I have formed a temporary alliance, but it will fall apart in the end. This kind of promise is as worthless as toilet paper. If you are sincere, answer my question honestly. Is the main body of the system really in Wang Huiyun's body? Or is the system in her body just a subsystem? Is it just a bait separated from the main body to mess up the world? Answer me, don't hide it. The system was stunned. It said, that's 2 questions. Jiang Pingji snorted. Then answer the first question. Is the system in Wang Huiyun the main body? The system answered very decisively, no. Hearing that, Jiang Pingji's lips curled into a cold and mocking smile. Sure enough, it was not the main body. In this way, she was even more certain of her previous speculation. The main body of the system was really well hidden. It was a pity that she forgot to hide the fox's tail. She was a qualified hunter, but the system was a failed prey. She said meaningfully, I thought my tricks were deep enough. I didn't expect to meet an ancestor who was born to play tricks. However, things like intelligence are destined. No matter how deep the tricks are, people are too stupid. I don't want to know what's wrong with the main body of the system. It cut itself open and divided itself into subsystems, but please don't let it happen to me again. The system secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Since she said that, it should mean that she agreed to cooperate, right? I've answered your question. Are you willing to help me now? Jiang Pingji blinked and said innocently, don't you know that all is fair in war? Making a promise to a gangster leader? The patterns were all broken. An unstamped promise is like a roll of toilet paper to me. I can throw it away after using it. The system, F***, Jiang Pingji, you're shameless. Jiang Pingji crossed her arms in front of her chest. When will that dimensional patrol merchant arrive? I can report you to him. The system snorted twice. In your dreams. It will take at least 10 years. Don't even think about tricking me. 10 years? That long? Jiang Pingji asked. It's been more than 10 years. Why are you so eager to seek my protection now? Trying to trick me again? The system said in a contemptuous voice, you are a human. How long do you have to live? I'm a system. Time is cheap to me. To you, it takes up 1/5 of your life. To me, it's only 3 to 5 days, or even a few hours. Mortal, don't use your time to measure my time. As an almost eternal existence, you are but a mayfly to me that is born and dead. Tremble, lowly human. Jiang Pingji responded with an, oh. She was not provoked by the system's words. She stabbed back bitterly. Congratulations. Then you can go to prison in 3 to 5 days. I can still be free and unfettered for more than 10 years before I'm destroyed by the dimensional merchant. The system, F***, where did the director find such a hateful female protagonist? Jiang Pingji sneered. She buried what happened that night in the bottom of her heart. It did not stir up the slightest ripple. With the system, it seemed that it was not unacceptable for there to be any dimensional patrol merchants. Just as the system said, reborn, or time travelers, were all outsiders who illegally occupied the bodies of the indigenous people. To the local plane, they were all pathogens. If there were really rules in the world, in order to maintain balance and order, it was natural to eliminate the anomalies. She had nothing to say. What would come would eventually come. Jiang Pingji accepted it calmly. Of course, she would not let her remaining time go to waste just because she was going to die in more than 10 years. On the contrary, she would live a more exciting life. She would live a more passionate and unrestrained life. Even if she had to die, she would let the people of this plain and their descendants remember the name Jiang Pingji thoroughly. Her eyes seemed to be burning with flames. Not only did the system's words not make her restrain herself, but it also stimulated Jiang Pingji's determination to do something big. She felt that unifying the 9 prefectures was not a big deal. It was better to unite the world together. Was it because she had turned this plane upside down and deviated from the trajectory of fate? Would that annoying merchant arrive in advance? If it knew that Jiang Pingji was such a troublemaker who was not afraid of death, the system would have endured it no matter what. Now it was full of regret. As a small subsystem, it could not defeat Jiang Pingji. After being exposed to the night wind for most of the day, Jiang Pingji raised her hand to pat the cold air off her body. She was ready to get up and go back to sleep. On the way, she happened to meet Yang Si, who had woken up at night. Jiang Pingji saw that his eyes were misty and that he was floating as he walked. He yawned all the way. "My lord, why did you come out dressed in military attire?" Yang Si covered his mouth with his hand so that it would not be too rude to open his mouth while yawning. Jiang Pingji said casually, "I had a nightmare and woke up in fright. I was not sleepy at all, so I went out for a walk." Yang Si did not suspect anything and continued to sleep. Tomorrow he would enter the mountain road and attack Jinmen County. After that, there would be a series of high-intensity combat plans. With his weak body, after riding a horse for a few days, he was so tired that he felt like he was falling apart. If he did not seize the time to recover his strength, he was afraid that he would not even be able to climb the mountain road. That would be embarrassing. Jiang Pingji also returned to her original position, crossed her arms, and slept. Regardless of whether it was the system or the dimensional merchant, the most important thing now was to take down Jinmen County. She did not care about anything else. However, she really did not expect the system itself to have a brain. Was it dark under the light? It was indeed a trick. She yawned and found a comfortable position. Soon she fell asleep, and her breathing became long and steady. The next day, the weather was rare. The sky was blue and looked refreshing. The golden sunlight shone on the snow. It was golden and dazzling, so bright that it was a little uncomfortable. Jiang Pingji gathered her troops and horses. She was still dressed in her red and white military attire. She looked energetic and had a high aura. "My lord, the situation of the mountain road has been investigated. Last night, I also ordered people to quietly sweep away the snow. Now we can pass through." Chapter 634. The mountain path was winding and rugged, and the narrow road stretched as far as the eye could see. Jiang Pingji rode on Little White's back with relative ease. As an excellent descendant of Shalon and the warhorses of the northern borderline, Little White's endurance and weight-bearing ability were extremely strong. Every step was steady and easy. In contrast, the others looked a little embarrassed. The mountain path to Jinmen County is already so rugged. I wonder how difficult the road to Fenghu County will be. Yang Si was also secretly complaining. As a counselor, he enjoyed special treatment. Most of the other soldiers walked. He could still ride a horse and did not need to walk on his legs, but the bumpy ride still made him suffer. Jiang Pingji saw that his face was deathly pale with exhaustion that could not be dispelled. She then looked at the purplish-red horse under him, which was panting. She took the initiative to suggest, "Why don't you ride Little White? Look at you. I think you'll be exhausted before we reach Jinmen County." Yang Si was a little tempted, but when he thought that intelligent horses had a temper, he suddenly became a little timid. "Won't it throw me off the horse?" Yang Si nervously grabbed the reins. If he was not afraid that Little White would be uncomfortable, he would have hugged the horse's neck for safety. Unexpectedly, not only did Little White not throw Yang Si off the horse's back, but it continued to hurry on without complaint. Don't deliberately cause trouble. Little White's temperament is still good. Jiang Pingji changed to Yang Si's previous horse and controlled the horse with the reins. Fortunately, our opponent this time is the Red Lotus group. If it were a smarter enemy, I wouldn't dare to take this mountain path. She looked around at the terrain on the horse's back and teased him with a smile. Taking the mountain path was indeed a strange move. They could avoid the enemy's eyes and ears without being noticed. Whether it was a sneak attack or something else, it had a miraculous effect. However, risks and benefits coexisted. The mountain path was not only suitable for them to sneak attack the enemy, but it was also suitable for the enemy to ambush them. Little White walked very steadily, which was a world of difference from the previous bumpy ride. This made Xianxia feel a little better. He said, "The situation is different. My lord marches at lightning speed. Even if the enemy has the intention to ambush us, they won't be able to make it in time." According to Xianxia's estimation, when they had just captured the small town, the higher-ups of the Red Lotus group had just received news of their arrival. It would take time to transmit the order. By the time they reacted and prepared for an ambush, we would have already passed through the mountain road and taken down Jinmen County. Jiang Pingji fought at a fast pace, but how many people could do that? Most people could only pay attention to one place. By the time they received the news, the best opportunity had already passed. Why were excellent strategists so sought after? It wasn't just because they were able to win a battle from 1,000 miles away in a world where information transmission was lagging behind. More importantly, they were more comprehensive and thoughtful than ordinary people. It was like playing chess. Ordinary people would take one step at a time, but schemers like them would take 10 steps at a time. Just as Xianxia had said, although the mountain road leading to Jinmen County was long, the slope was relatively gentle and it consumed less energy than expected. Which of Jiang Pingji's soldiers did not train with weights as a daily routine? For an ordinary army, it would take 6 to 8 hours to pass through this mountain path, but for them, it would only take a little more than 2 hours. At the same time, the troops of Jinmen County had also been urgently transferred to Fenghu County to defend. The Red Lotus group arranged several scout teams, and sure enough, they found suspicious people. They judged that these were enemy scouts who had attacked the outposts. The scholar clenched his fists nervously. The room was burning with a blazing charcoal fire, and it was so hot that his palms were sweating. Sure enough, Lu Shi's target is Fenghu County. The scholar nervously put his hands behind his back and paced back and forth in the hall, as if he wanted to rub a hole in the ground. He said, "Go and investigate again. Report back quickly if there's anything. If you find Lu Shi's main force, don't act rashly and alert him." Not long after, a voice came from outside the hall again. The Red Lotus group had found traces of scout activity at the exit of the mountain road in Fenghu County. Every once in a while, someone would come to report back, which made the scholar extremely nervous. Lu Shi had sent a large number of scouts. What did this mean? It meant that the number of troops he had brought was large, and it was very likely that it was more than 10,000. Report, report, report. The messenger kept going back and forth. Every time he received a reply, the scholar's nervousness increased. In the end, he was so anxious that he was sweating profusely. He went out and looked at the sky outside. Flustered and exasperated, he said, "Haven't the reinforcements from Jinmen County arrived yet?" The messenger hung his head and answered timidly, "They're still half a day away." Half a day? So slow? The scholar was angry and anxious. He had never felt that time would pass so slowly. He was like an ant on a hot pan. For him, every minute and every second was torture. Now, he only hoped that Lu Shi would move slowly. It would be best if he could wait for their reinforcements to enter the city before coming. Otherwise, he really did not have the confidence to fight against Jiang Pingji with his current troops. Where is Mr. N? Quickly invite Mr. N over to discuss countermeasures. Thinking of Nchui, the scholar had a backbone. He hurriedly asked the servant beside him to invite Nchui. The manservant ran as fast as he could, but Nchui was no longer in Jinmen County. "Do you know where Mr. N went?" The scholar did not feel that anything was wrong. Although Nchui had left, his brothers who were close to him were still there. The scholar did not suspect anything. The servant replied, "I've asked carefully. Mr. N seems to have gone to Honglian County overnight." The scholar frowned. He did not understand why Nchui had gone to Honglian County at this time. However, he did not dwell on this issue for too long, because another messenger had found traces of scouts. What made the scholar even more terrified was that the scouts were getting closer and closer to Jinmen County. In other words, when these scouts had finished investigating the situation, Lu Shi's main force would attack. Thinking of the reinforcements that would arrive in half a day, the scholar wanted to grab his hair in frustration. Because the scouts were moving around frequently and spying on their situation, the scholar had never thought that this was just bait set up by Jiang Pingji. Qiguan Rang was in charge of the Central Army. Under his arrangements, scouts were sent out to scare and tease the Red Lotus group. As for the main force, at this moment, they had already passed through the mountain road and crossed a vast expanse of white snow, galloping toward Jinmen County. Chengde County belonged to the northern region. The snow was heavy in winter. Except for the official road, no one cleared the snow in other places. Usually, they waited for the weather to warm up and let it melt on its own. Jiang Pingji had already asked the people of the Vanguard Battalion to prepare plain-colored linen and draped it over their bodies as cover. The weather was good that day. The snow reflected the light. In order not to hurt their eyes, the guards at the city gate would not stare at the snow outside the city for a long time. The garrison of Jinmen County was almost completely transferred away. Only 3,000 old, weak, and disabled soldiers were left behind. The sun was shining brightly, and the reflection made their eyes very uncomfortable. Outside, it was freezing cold. There were only a few Red Lotus group on the city wall who were seriously guarding. Chapter 635. Gaokao Yila. Streamer, do you want to cover your eyes with a coarse cloth to block the light? It's so annoying. In ancient times, there were no sunglasses or protective glasses. The ultraviolet rays reflected from the snow will harm the eyes. It's easy to get snow blindness. Little angels, if the person above didn't remind me, I would have forgotten about this. You must be careful of snow blindness. Let's get together. Please, we're at war now. Whether we can survive is still a problem. What's a pair of eyes worth? Jiang Pingji turned off the bullet screen in the streaming room and turned the screen to the smallest size to avoid distraction. Dian Yen was beside her. Because he was nervous, his voice sounded a little rough. My lord, could it be a trap? He saw that there were only a few soldiers on the city gate. They were too lax. Jiang Pingji smiled and said, Do you think everyone is like me, your lord? When I run the army, I issue orders repeatedly. Those who disobey will be dealt with according to military law. Those who slack and play tricks have to think twice. The Red Lotus group is different. Discipline is lax. Now that most of the elites have been transferred away, the remaining people think that they have nothing to worry about. Naturally, they won't take extra precautions. It's such a cold day. Who wants to be cold? They'll slack if they can. If the guards on the city gate assumed a solemn stance, Jiang Pingji would be worried that there would be an ambush. Dian Yen nodded thoughtfully. Looking at the city gate, Jiang Pingji narrowed her eyes dangerously. She said, I really don't like this city gate. Dian Yen didn't understand. Weren't all the city gates the same? Why was there one that didn't like it? Jiang Pingji said, Dian Yen, lead the soldiers to cover me. Now we have to break into the city as fast as possible. I have a good idea. Dian Yen didn't ask what Jiang Pingji's idea was. He only needed to do what he was supposed to do. My lord, please rest assured. Jiang Pingji nodded. She looked down at the long spear in her hand. It was too thin and too long. She turned her head to look at Dian Yan's waist. She reached out and said, Lend me your 2 big axes. Dian Yan was tall and strong. He had great strength. He especially liked to use such heavy weapons during battles. With one swing of the axe, he could split a person from the top of his skull to his pelvis. The scene was bloody and violent. Every time he came back from a battle, he looked like he had been fished out from a pool of blood. Hearing that Jiang Pingji wanted to borrow his weapon, it wasn't that Dian Yen was unwilling, but, My lord, these 2 axes are too heavy, I'm afraid. Dian Yen had not finished his words when his eyes widened so much that they were about to pop out. The 2 axes were specially made and weighed nearly 50 kilograms, but they were as light as goose feathers in Jiang Pingji's hands. She did not seem to be straining at all. Every time Dian Yen thought he had a good understanding of his lord's combat abilities, she would always be able to break his record. The weight is quite comfortable, she pondered for a moment, then her lips curled into a faint smile. She looked at the city gate with malice and interest. At that moment, seeing Jiang Pingji holding 2 axes in her hands, the audience in the streaming room was stirred up again, and the bullet screen was filled with comments. Cola, yesterday I saw a young general in red and silver armor, and today it's a lowly with 2 axes? Lao Cg Lianmeng, the host's body is already 17 or 18 years old. Lolita? Have you ever seen such an old Lolita? In Yueja Zhuge Qinma. There's nothing wrong with an old lowly. Gui Kai Guo Fengxiu, I've already moved the bench and melon seeds and drinks. I'm sitting down to watch the host's heroic battle. Boss Chow. TSK, the commenter above, you really have a heavy taste. People will really die when the host goes to war. Faced with bloody corpses, large and small intestines flowing out of the abdominal cavity, spleens, accumulated feces, and crushed brains, are you sure you can eat melon seeds and drinks? Thinking of Boss Chow's bullet screen, a similar scene involuntarily appeared in his mind, and he almost vomited. Jiang Pingji really wanted to cause trouble. At present, it was not clear about the specific garrison situation in Jinmen district, so Jiang Pingji did not dare to be careless. In order to end the battle quickly, she could only choose to explode and shatter the Red Lotus Group's momentum with a thunderous attack. She would use the fastest speed to take down Jinmen district. In this way, she had to cause trouble. Yang Si, who was protected at the back, looked in the direction of the city gate from afar. He did not know whether Jiang Pingji would directly set up a battle formation to attack or launch a sneak attack. He pondered in his heart. There was already movement from the soldiers in front. What does my lord want to do? Yang Si almost screamed because he saw Jiang Pingji turn over and get on Little White's back. A row of soldiers advanced in an orderly manner. Because of the snow, the sunlight, and the white cloth draped over Jiang Pingji's body, the soldiers on the city gate did not immediately discover her traces. The soldiers of the Red Lotus group hid under the pilasters to take shelter from the wind. Their clothes were not uniform. Some of them wore very thick clothes, while others were very thin. They curled up and shivered with their backs straight. The only thing they had in common was that they were all older, and their physical strength was not as good as that of the younger generation. Oh my God, it's so cold. He opened his mouth and exhaled a breath of white air. The hot air that he had painstakingly held back escaped again. Stop talking. The more you talk, the colder it gets. If you have the energy to talk, why don't you shake a little more? If you can't do it, pray to the gods. I think it's a little useful. In this era, ordinary people relied on walking to get around. Did they rely on shaking to keep warm? As for hot water pots, they did not exist. They were just a group of old, weak, and disabled soldiers. It was good enough that they could survive in this world. How could they dare to ask for more? The veterans, guarding the city gate, huddled together to keep warm. They barely had some warmth. In a world of ice and snow, they did not have enough clothes to keep out the cold. When guarding the city during the day, they just sent 1 or 2 people to stand guard. The others huddled under the pilasters to take shelter from the wind. They huddled together to keep warm. When the people on guard could not stand it anymore, they would take turns to do it. At this time, someone complained, "I wasn't on duty today. I really don't know what's gotten into the higher-ups. They transferred everyone away and made me the scapegoat." You're not the only one who's unlucky. Stop talking. It's the chief's order to transfer people away. They've gone to eradicate the heretics. Heretics? Who's the heretic? Who else can it be? Lu Shi from next door. If the gods say he's a heretic, then he's a heretic, a demon who brings disaster to the world. Lu Shi? Almost everyone in the north knew this name. It was the same for the people of Chengde County. Most of them made a living by mining coal, but in the current world, the people could not even afford food. Who would buy coal? No one bought coal, which meant that many people who dug coal for a living would lose their livelihood. They could not even feed their families. In the past 2 years, Jiang Pingji had repeatedly purchased large amounts of coal from Chengde County. When the Red Lotus Group and Jiang Pingji had not completely fallen out, she had taken care of the business in Chengde County and provided for many people. As for the topic of heretics and demons, most people agreed with the crusade. Only a small group of people remained silent. At this time, someone looked up at the sky and found many dark spots in the sky. He raised his hand and pointed. "What's that?" Chapter 636. Enemy attack, enemy. A wave of arrows fell from the sky and landed behind the battlements. The voices of the gate guards stopped abruptly, and they let out a soft whimper. Their half-standing bodies collapsed with a loud crash, but the rain of arrows was still falling. Soon, the fallen corpses were pierced into hedgehogs. Dark red blood flowed out of their bodies and seeped into the stone bricks of the city wall, dampening the ground. A nauseating sweet and fishy smell filled the air. After the first wave of arrows, everyone, regardless of whether they were standing or sitting on the ground, was on high alert. How was this possible? Why were there enemies? Someone was shot in the arm by an arrow. He clung tightly to the base of the battlements, holding a wooden shield in his hand, and quietly poked his head out. It would have been better if they hadn't seen it, but once they saw it, they were almost scared out of their wits. Beads of cold sweat broke out on their backs. The snow under the city wall was thick. At first glance, it seemed nothing, but when they looked closely, they could see something wriggling quickly on the snow, like a swarm of ants surging toward the city wall. When they got closer and looked again, it was clear that there were countless enemies. Who were they? Where did they come from? The rain of arrows continued to fall from the sky. The Red Lotus Group was scared out of their wits. They didn't even realize that the enemies under the city wall didn't carry any siege equipment. As long as they defended against the rain of arrows and organized a wave of counterattacks, they might be able to survive a little longer. However, they were already stunned by this sudden wave of attacks. Not to mention organizing a counterattack, it was already good enough that no one stepped on them. Some soldiers hurriedly picked up the weapons that had been placed aside and tried to shoot arrows down the city wall. More people covered their heads and scurried away. Dian Yen watched Jiang Pingji ride away and secretly gritted his teeth. He ordered the soldiers to continue advancing down the city wall while continuing to shoot arrows. "Cover the Lord." Yang Si, who was at the back, saw Jiang Pingji's figure that had shrunk to a small. He was so scared that he almost fell into the snow. Even if she was the commander of the Vanguard Battalion, who would act so willfully and recklessly like her? Yang Si's heart was in his throat. He almost forgot how to breathe. He stared ahead without blinking. Even though his eyes were a little sore from staring, he still didn't dare to blink. He was afraid that Jiang Pingji would die on the battlefield, in the blink of an eye. The current situation was much more thrilling than yesterday's skirmish. Just the height of the two city walls was not on the same level. Yesterday, the small city was only slightly more than 20 feet high. His lord could climb the city wall with her coquettish movements. What about today? How was the lord going to get up the city wall that was 30 feet high? Jiang Pingji had only climbed halfway. Perhaps she would be shot into a hedgehog by the Red Lotus Group on the city wall. At this moment he finally understood Wei Si's sadness. With such a carefree and worrisome lord, the officials were either worried sick or scared out of their wits. Yang Si felt that his lifespan would be halved if he were to go through 2 more rounds like this. It would be difficult for him to die of old age. The viewers in the live stream also felt the same thrill as him. Yang Si was holding the line at the rear. His eyesight was limited, and he could only see Jiang Pingji's figure turning into a blurry red and white. However, it was different for the audience in the streaming room. Their perspective followed Jiang Pingji's movements. How could that feeling be described as pleasurable? It was even more exciting than watching a 3D movie. If their faces were closer to the screen, it felt like those arrows would fly out of the screen and pierce through their brains. Jintian Changsho, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. Streamer, be careful. Cheongda Jibikeguo, F*CK, That arrow just now was too thrilling. If it wasn't for the streamer's quick reaction, wouldn't her body have been pierced? I still need to work hard this month. I'm trembling. Even time travel is so dangerous now. Henceforth Tian Tian Siging. I'm scared to death. I estimate that pair of broad axes must weigh more than 50 kilograms, right? How strong is the streamer? She looks so relaxed. If it wasn't for the fact that it's impossible for the streaming room to be fake, I would have thought that they're imitations. The viewers couldn't be blamed for their doubts. Jiang Pengji could wield the spear so fast that it left afterimages, but it was too much for her to wield a pair of long axes so fast that they left afterimages. Fortunately, Jiang Pengji had already turned off the bullet screen. Otherwise, the overwhelming and colorful bullet screen would have drowned her vision. With Dian Yen supporting her from the rear, there were very few arrows that flew down from the city wall. Relying on Little White's speed and explosive power, Jiang Pengji seemed to be in danger, but in fact, she perfectly avoided all the cold arrows with hidden killing intent. She approached the city wall without any danger. Yang Si was so anxious that he gritted his teeth. The height of the city wall of Jinmen County was different from that of the small town yesterday. How could she climb up? In his anxiety, Yang Si unconsciously clenched his fists. His nails were deeply embedded into his flesh, leaving a few nail marks on his palm. Compared to his worries, the viewers in the streaming room were mostly watching the show. Zhuizhen Beishijing. It's coming, it's coming. The streamer's ultimate skill of jumping on the wall in the air. Don't blink. Qingshan Weishue Bai 2. Streamer, begin your performance. However, to everyone's surprise, Jiang Pengji didn't pull out a rope or anything else at all. She was less than 20 meters away from the city gate. The muscles in her right arm suddenly swelled and accumulated strength. Her arm was bent like a bow, and the handle of the axe was thrown out by her. Her calm face had a hint of ferocity. In the next moment, a loud rumbling sound came from the city gate. The long axe was deeply embedded in the city gate. The entire body of the axe was completely submerged. Like a spider web, cracks spread in all directions with the long axe as the center, and a thin layer of ash spread out. The entire city gate trembled. She threw it with too much strength. Little White raised its hooves high. Its body was almost perpendicular to the ground. It looked up to the sky and let out a roar. Jiang Pengji had expected this. She tightened her grip on the horse's belly and grabbed the reins with the other hand. It was steady and steady. It had no intention of being thrown off. Little White took advantage of this to offset the force of its forward charge. Its raised hooves fell heavily again. In an instant, the entire streaming room was quiet. There was a momentary vacuum in the bullet screen. Jiang Pengji's chest rose and fell violently. Her fair cheeks were a little flushed. She raised another long axe high and shouted loudly. Everyone, defeat them. Dian Yen held back the surging blood in his chest and ordered, attack the city. At his command, the soldiers quickened their pace, and the rain of arrows became more concentrated. In Jinmen County, the Red Lotus group members who stayed behind to guard the city were already panicking and at a loss when they received the news that the enemy was attacking the city. Guard the city gate, we can't let them in. A member of the Red Lotus group roared. Only then did the panicking Red Lotus army calm down a little and mechanically defend the city gate. As long as they held the city gate and resisted the enemies outside, they might be able to wait for reinforcements. That was what many people thought. Dozens of soldiers blocked the city gate, for fear that Jiang Pengji would use the siege logs to hit the city gate. In fact, apart from weapons, Jiang Pengji did not carry any siege or defense equipment. She herself was the strongest siege murderous aura. The people of the Red Lotus group were terrified when they saw the shiny axe piercing through the top of the city gate. However, in the next instant, an even more horrifying scene occurred. Chapter 637. Dozens of members of the Red Lotus group desperately pressed against the city wall. Because of the commotion caused by the axe, the skin of the wall and sand fell from above their heads. Now that the weather was freezing, they couldn't exert their full strength at all. They pressed against the city wall with both hands, feeling as if they were touching a large block of ice. "Hold on a little longer, we can't let the thieves outside rush in." As soon as the voice of the small leader fell, dozens of people felt an unparalleled force coming from the city gate. It was as if a mountain was collapsing and pressing down on them. In the next moment, the city gate, which already had huge cracks on it, suddenly opened wide with a bang. The people behind the city gate squeezed together, almost having the illusion that their intestines had been squeezed out of their throats. One by one, they fell down. Before they could react, a snow-white figure galloped past like lightning, accompanied by the clattering of hooves. A gust of wind blew past. With a slash of the long axe, a head flew up, leaving behind a corpse whose body temperature had not yet dropped. As Jiang Pingji rushed into the city gate, the soldiers behind her were greatly encouraged. Their morale rose again, and their battle cries shook the heavens. Dian Yen didn't have the two long axes that he carried with him, so he randomly found a spear to replace them. He led the soldiers and rushed into the city wall with Jiang Pingji. Yang Si felt as if he had just taken the steepest roller coaster and was forced to bungee jump. His heart was thumping violently. When he heard the soldiers beside him ask him if they should coordinate with the attack, Yang Si trembled violently and his mind became clear. "Charge! Coordinate with the Lord!" Yang Si excitedly pulled out the scholar's sword that was used as a decoration at his waist. He was so excited that he almost bit his tongue. The city gate had been breached. The members of the Red Lotus group who were resisting at the city gate were all killed by Dian Yen, who rushed in after them. The reinforcements who rushed over were no match for them at all. They were completely crushed almost immediately. At one point, there was only the sound of fighting and the scene of blood splattering. Jiang Pingji rode on the back of the little white horse. Not only was she fast, but the long axe in her hand was like the soul hook axe in the hands of the King of Hell. With one swing of the axe, very few people died with a whole corpse. Even if they didn't die, Little White would follow up with a hoof and crush their sternum. Those who died on the spot were too numerous to count. Little White rarely cooperated with Jiang Pingji, but it was full of intelligence. Its performance was not any weaker than White's. It was not the slightest bit timid and shy like it usually was. It stepped on people cleanly and efficiently. If someone tried to raise their hand to stop it, it would crush their arm and sternum together. The soldiers of the Red Lotus group in Jinmen County were utterly defeated. They fled in all directions like headless flies. Some people had even just gotten out of bed, their eyes wide open. They couldn't believe that Jinmen County had changed hands so easily. "Why is it so noisy outside?" someone asked doubtfully. After the military forces in Jinmen County had been transferred away, the number of people had decreased by a lot. Now that it was winter, the people were unwilling to go out, so the streets were quiet. Now that it had suddenly become lively, the bustling noise was astonishing. However, when he listened carefully, he realized that something was wrong. How was that the sound of excitement and jubilation? It was clearly the sound of shouting to kill, beating, and howling like wolves. Is there a war outside? Can't you let people sleep? What's with all the noise? Some people with bad tempers began to roar at the source of the noise. Seeing that it was not working, they went straight back to the house with their kitchen knives in an attempt to intimidate the people. However, before they could step out of the fence, a man covered in blood rushed in from the corner of the street and fell to the ground, forming a pool of blood. Seeing this scene, the man was so scared that his legs turned to jelly. He fell to the ground, trembling, then turned around and crawled back into the house. It was so scary. They attacked all the way to the center of Jinmen County with irresistible force. Everywhere they passed, there was almost no resistance. The soldiers on Jiang Pingji's side were all well trained. They trained continuously throughout the year. Large-scale training was concentrated in midsummer and cold winter. They wore the same armor and held standard weapons. They cooperated with each other in combat, forming groups of 3 to 5 people. On the other hand, the Red Lotus group was full of people dressed in rags. Just the weather alone could defeat them, let alone the others. It was difficult for the old, weak, sick, and disabled to move. How could they pick up weapons and fight against the enemy? The other members of the Red Lotus group, who had rushed over after hearing the noise, were so scared that their legs turned to jelly. They could not summon the slightest will to fight. They laid down their weapons and surrendered, their faces ashen. Many people did not even know that Jinmen County had changed hands overnight. If the streets had not been cleaned of blood and broken limbs, who would have thought that a siege had broken out in the seemingly peaceful Jinmen County not long ago? Xianxia could not think of another word to describe this battle other than fast. The soldiers strangled the enemy and defeated the momentum of the Red Lotus group's garrison, making them unable to summon the will to fight. Then, they shouted that those who surrendered would not be killed. Jiang Pingji was a warlike person, but she was not a murderous person. Enemies who no longer had the will to fight were not worth her killing at all. She shook off the blood and minced meat on the axe and turned over to dismount. Little White, well done. I'll get someone to prepare the best food for you when we get back. Jiang Pingji stroked Little White's mane. It snorted and rubbed against her palm, acting like a spoiled child in a docile manner. Because of Jiang Pingji's violent opening of the way, Little White's snow-white fur had been dyed scarlet, which added a bit of heroic spirit. Xianxia laid out the layout and commanded. Dian Yen cleaned up the stubborn enemies and captives. Jiang Pingji also charged in the middle of the vanguard battalion. When the sun rose above their heads, it was already noon. Jiang Pingji leaned against Little White's side. She raised her hand and twisted the sleeves and hem of her clothes under her armor. Thick blood was squeezed out and dripped to the ground. It was clearly a bloody, terrifying, and horrifying scene, but she did it very naturally, as if she was wringing rainwater instead of human blood. My lord! A call came from afar. Jiang Pingji looked up and saw Xianxia stagger and fall off the back of the date-red horse. Jiang Pingji glanced at the scholar's sword at Xianxia's waist. It was originally only used for decoration, a good-looking ornament, but at that moment, it was permeated with the smell of blood. It was obvious that it had also seen blood. When she looked at Xianxia's face, which contained hidden excitement, her expression softened a little. Are you okay? The battlefield is too chaotic. How dare you run around? Xia's job was mental work. The fighting and killing could be left to the martial arts. If anything happened to Xianxia, the team, which was already short of people, would be even more lacking. Jinmen District had already been conquered. There would be many things to be busy with in the future. They could not afford to lose manpower at this time. Xianxia did not know Jiang Pingji's thoughts. He thought that she was concerned about him, and his heart suddenly warmed up. Just now, he called her lord, willingly. Thank you for your concern, my lord. I'm fine. Other than the pain in his thighs from riding the horse, he was fine. He had also experienced the addiction of charging and breaking through enemy lines. The gentleman's martial arts that he had learned in the past were not useless. Jiang Pingji's voice was calm. Has the battlefield been cleaned up? How many wounded are there? How many captives? Did anyone take the opportunity to cause trouble? You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.